Welcome to Veronica Live, and we have such a big show for you today. We're going to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and you know him. He is America's Patriot, I always say. So he'll be joining us as our first interview this morning. And then I've got Statesman John Salick as my wingman this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Veronica from Beachcom.
I know, you multi-housed people, you know. Well, that's great. I'm so glad you're here. And our other guest this morning will be Larry Schweikart, and he is a New York Times best-selling author several times over, and his new book just dropped, A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. Oh, my goodness. So we're going to get into that word globalism. John?
I know. I'm looking forward to this. You know, I went through the book, and it really, you know, you got the guys that, first off, he's a history professor. You know, I mean, he writes history books, and he's had some really, really popular books, I come to find out. But this one really kind of, I have a whole page of notes.
I have pages of notes.
It's such a broad and fascinating subject, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him.
Well, and this is our Super Bowl show, so we'll have to ask everybody who they're rooting for. I saw an interview this morning, and it was so funny, John, because Shaq wants to meet Taylor Swift. That is his Super Bowl goal out in Las Vegas. So
I was gonna say it's like let me see, what team is Taylor Swift on?
And the funny thing is she's doing like 2 nights in Tokyo, because this one woman I know, young woman that lives in Tokyo, went to her concert I guess a day ago, and so she posted it, and so I was looking at that, and then Taylor's going to do another concert today, and then I guess fly back 13 hours, and so that was like the trauma, you know, for my daughter and all these young women. How is Taylor going to make the Super Bowl? Oh, private jet.
Exactly.
Let's go green.
Bombardier Global Express 7500, which can really go fast. So.
Well, was this not the craziest news week too, John? We have so much to talk about. We've got to talk about the border bill today. Today happening at the Republican Party of Florida. They're voting to endorse Trump and ... probably Senator Scott. So we'll talk about that. We've got to talk about the breaking Tucker Carlson interview that had over 100 million people watch him talk to Vladimir Putin, which the world called Tucker a traitor. We've got to talk about that. And then, oh my gosh, the Biden press conference, because the DOJ released the report, and apparently he's an old man and senile, and we already knew that. So he came out of blasting.
I was like, yeah, tell us something we don't know already, okay?
Oh, well, I don't know. Where do we even start before Allen West joins us this morning, John? It's been like such chaos. And, you know, the thing about the Putin interview is it's a long interview, John, which I finally discovered you can fast forward, which I forgot about that feature where they talk faster, you know? And
play it at 2x or 4x.
Well, yes, and that's what I was doing, because like the first 30 minutes of that Tucker interview, he talks about the history of Russia and borders and countries, and here's my one big huge takeaway that I want to chat with you about is all of these reports leading up to this event said he was a man on his deathbed. He was not. He was not. He looked great.
Well, you know, we just hear so much propaganda, and particularly from our side, you know, and I don't know whether they're ill-informed or purposely, and I think it's the later here, that they purposely, you know, publish this stuff in order to mislead the general public about what's going on. And you know, we just, our intelligence services are not serving the country very well. They're serving other interests.
Well, and why do you think they wanted to take out Tucker? They were like, he is a traitor. How dare him? I mean, because let me tell you, like the Laura Ingraham show probably has several million. It doesn't have 100 million people watching a 2-hour interview. Right. Plus the teaser had 100 million people that watched the teaser on X. John?
Well, you know, it's the whole thing because he's a conservative. Okay, that's why they're attacking him like this and calling him a traitor and all this kind of stuff. You know, the leftist, particularly the leftist press, does not go after, when they go and they interview, some other person, the Shah, I'm sorry, the Ayatollah in Iran, okay? They go interview him and they're heroes, and it's because it's, they go interview Hamas, they're heroes. And yet they attack the normal. It kind of goes to our whole discussion here later on about globalism and stuff.
Yes. Who's in control?
Right. It all ties in, because it's like whose interest, Tucker is taking away their power. Okay.
Well, and I love it. I love it. So
100 million people is not. Those
that's
people
a lot.
CNN would dream for 100 million.
Exactly.
100 million hit, on one of their shows. Okay.
Well, when we come back,
and that's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line, and we'll be talking about this all morning. We have a huge show, and we're going to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel Allen West shortly. We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we're here with our first guest this morning, and you know him. He's America's Patriot, I always say, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Welcome back, sir, to Veronica Live.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Veronica. Thank you for having me.
Well, John and I were just talking this morning. The world is upside down, and we have so many news stories to talk with you about. And the first one, since you are a man fighting the fight in Texas, is that border bill this week. Dead on arrival, and thank goodness. So I wanted to hear your takeaways from that awful bill they were trying to push forward.
Well, I think it's just a shame that people in Washington, D.C. believe that they have to do something when all they have to do is to abide by and uphold the laws that we already have. The reason why we have a wide open border and 8 to 9 to 10 million people have entered this country illegally is because in January of 2021, upon assuming office, Joe Biden issued unconstitutional executive orders that reversed everything that had secured our border. He has violated his constitutional oath and duty and responsibility. So the onus lies clearly on Joe Biden, on the Biden administration, if they want to secure the border. And it is absurd for him to say that he needed border legislation to be passed so that he could secure the border. No, he undid the border himself, and he is not doing anything to correct that. And it's just perplexing to me how some Republicans will continue to, fall for the line of the Democrats, be it Chuck Schumer or Joe Biden or whomever, and put themselves on the blame line instead of coming together and saying, here are the series of executive actions that Joe Biden took that opened up our border, that made us now susceptible to drug trafficking by way of fentanyl, human and sex trafficking, and now terrorist trafficking, because we know that we have terrorist cells that have come across that border.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, Colonel West, this week I heard a story that we know that 25,000 Chinese have come through the border. Who are these Chinese men? 25,000 is a huge number. I'm like petrified.
Yeah, well, you've got, tens of thousands of single military-age males Chinese that have infiltrated this country, and they're not coming here seeking asylum. There is no way that you can tell me that amount of number of single military-age males could come out of China with briefcases full of cash, because you got to think about it. You're not rowing a boat from China to the Gulf of Mexico. So obviously you're taking, airplane flights, and you got to pay the cartels to bring you across, and you got to come through multiple different countries. Xi Jinping is not allowing that to happen without knowing exactly what he's doing. And furthermore, it's not just that number of single military-age males. It's those that are coming from Venezuela, those that are coming from, terrorist countries on the terrorist watch list. And that's being allowed to happen here in the United States of America. So again, this border security legislation would not have stopped that. As a matter of fact, the absurdity of it was to say that, we're going to allow 5,000 in each day. So I guess if you're 5,001, you just take a number and you just wait to come in the next day.
Wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, until tomorrow.
So Colonel West, what was going on with Senator Langford trying to negotiate this deal? And they seem to be shocked, the Republicans in the Senate seem to be shocked at the pushback from the normal everyday Republicans out there, and probably most Americans actually, about what was in this bill and what they were going to do with it. I mean, they seem to be surprised by it.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I mean, I went into Congress with James Lankford back in 2011 in the House of Representatives, and I don't know if he's just completely lost touch. I know that the Oklahoma State GOP has censured him because of his push for this border security legislation. If you come down here, you'll see exactly what is going on. And when you again, what undid the border? It was not, legislation. All we need is for the reversal of Joe Biden's executive actions. So I just don't understand why Republicans always seem to fall into the trap of the Democrats. And now what do you hear them saying? Well, the border would be secure except for those pesky little Republicans that don't want to pass border security legislation. Well, first and foremost, I thought Alejandro Mayorkas said that the border was secure. So if the border is secure, why do we need border security legislation? So it's just a dog chasing its tail, and Republicans have to stop being part of this kabuki dance.
Well, I think even more fundamental to that is the fact that we have laws, they won't enforce them. What makes Republicans in the Senate or and particularly the House even think that they're going to pass more laws, and that all of a sudden the Biden people are going to have an epiphany and start enforcing the law?
Well, they're not, and as a matter of fact, that border security legislation gave the president all types of loopholes not to abide by it. I mean, this whole number of 5,000 was, very iffy. Is not going to do anything as far as the deportations. How would that border security legislation protect the woman who was, seen on the cover of the New York Post being dragged down the street by some, illegal immigrant trying to take her cell phone? How is that going to correct the issue of illegal immigrants beating up police officers and then being released without bail and finally being apprehended in Arizona? So, no, the Constitution is very clear that it says that the United States, which means the federal government, is supposed to protect every state in the union from invasion. That's Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. Joe Biden is violating his oath to the Constitution to uphold our laws, and really that's a treasonous action that he has done.
Well, the question, though, that keeps coming forward now is, why is New York Mayor Adams is part of the problem? Now he's offering $53 million in incentives of you get a little credit card. I'm sick, Colonel West. I mean, because it's like Santa Claus up in New York now for 400 families.
Well, think about, the homeless and jobless veterans that we have, and they're not getting any debit card. But you know that you're in trouble when rapper 50 Cent or 50 or whatever he goes by, when he says, Mr. Mayor, please explain this policy and program to me. So when you have someone like that that is calling you out, the everyday American does not understand where this comes from. And again, these are taxpayer funds that are being used to provide to people, as we just said, single military-age males and others that are coming into this country illegally. I mean, go figure. But yet you're telling us that we need border security legislation which says we'll just slow it down to 5,000 a day. Well, 5,000 last time I checked, 365 days a year. That's a pretty big number that you're going to still allow people to come into the country illegal, and then ask the honest, everyday American taxpayer to fund that. This is absurd. It's ludicrous. And the whole reason why Democrats are trying to put Republicans on the blame line for this is that illegal immigration, the border, is the number one issue going into this 2024 election cycle.
Well, and Biden came out this week and said it was a Trump, caused by Trump and the MAGA folks. And again, I was ill. But fast forward to the DOJ report that, said that he's an old man and, we're not going to charge him with anything. He gets a pass. Yeah. And then the press conference, that was the worst press conference I've ever seen, defending his mental acuity. You
couldn't remember who the president of Egypt was.
It's a guy in Mexico,
Everything about it. I mean, it's the first time, though, I was excited about the press. They had a little bite to them, finally, in his face. So what? How did you see it, Alan?
Well, think about how incredibly the hypocrisy of the whole thing. we were told that Donald Trump was incompetent. Donald Trump was unfit. Donald Trump was crazy. We needed to institute the 25th Amendment to get Donald Trump out of office. But now all of a sudden we have a president that talks to French presidents who have been dead for 30 years. And now we have a report that tells us that this guy is unfit to stand trial. And by the way, understand that he did have classified documents illegally. He has no right to have classified documents. He was a senator, he was a vice president. You do not have that authority afforded to you. So he's guilty. That's what it comes out. But he's too old, he's too unfit for us to have a trial. Well, if he's unfit to go through a trial, how can he be fit to be the president of the United States of America? And again, how stupid it is that you actually go up there and try to defend your mental acuity, and you can't remember the difference between the president of Mexico and the president of Egypt. So you just put a nail in your own coffin. The Democrats are in a tough way to go, and so where are they talking about the 25th Amendment right now? Now, the country does not need a president, Kamala Harris, but this is the dire straits that we're in. So I do not think that Joe Biden will be their candidate. They will do something come their convention later on, July or August, with their super delegates. But really and truthfully, John and Veronica, this is senior abuse. And
yes, I agree.
Jill Biden would say, hey, look, I can't allow this to happen to my husband anymore. But obviously she cares more about her position than about his health.
I'm just curious what your opinion is. Here you have Kamala Harris, I call her Kamala the Clown, and she comes out and defends how vigorous he is and all this stuff, and it's like, I just cringe. But, from a power politics standpoint, this would have actually been a perfect move for her to dump him and under the 25th Amendment take over. I'm just curious, is she that weak politically, or are the Obama forces really the ones driving the train?
Well, everybody knows the Obama forces are driving the train. This is Barack Obama's third presidential term. Why would you stay close to Washington, D.C.? Valerie Jarrett is still there. They're running things out of their mansion. I'm sure they got a bunker that's down in the basement, 3 levels down or something. They're calling the shots, and they know that they cannot be successful with Kamala Harris there, and she wouldn't even be a good puppet. It would just cause chaos all across the globe if all of a sudden you push Joe Biden aside. So what they're trying to do is limp their way to the convention and then try to see what type of levers they can pull to revamp what their ticket will be going into 2024 cycle.
Well, and I'm sure, Colonel West, you watched the Tucker Putin interview and then the lead up to the Tucker interview. He was a traitor. How dare he? And John and I were talking because, we read news as you do 24/7, and all the news as of late has been, Putin's on his deathbed. Well, he looked pretty he was kicking during this interview, 2 hours. A lot of it was a historical take on Russia's history, but how did you see this whole interview? Because he said at one point that, if we stop giving Ukraine arms, that this war could end. So
that's not true. That's not true. I mean, the bottom line is that Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of the weakness of being the Obama administration and the Biden administration. During the Obama administration, he came in and took portions of eastern Ukraine, and then, of course, took the Crimea, and Barack Obama sent shoes and MREs. During the Trump administration, guess what? We had a tough foreign policy. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump took out some 200 members of the Wagner group, which is his paramilitary group in Syria. You didn't hear a peep. You didn't see any more encouragement. Then Joe Biden comes in, and then he sees the weakness, and he continues on. So Vladimir Putin, remember, this guy's former KGB. He is a great strategic propagandist. I will give him that. He knows how to manipulate people. And so he knows that he wants Ukraine back, and he sees this as a window of opportunity. So it has nothing to do about NATO. It has nothing to do about anything but what Vladimir Putin said his greatest disappointment of the 20th century was, and that was the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he would like to restore it. He's a vile, evil dictator, and that's just the bottom line.
And what about his comments about the CIA took out the Nord Stream?
Well, I mean, show me the facts of that. I mean, I don't. You can go out there and say all the things that you want, but and what I would really want to say was, why would Joe Biden shut down the Texas exportation of liquefied natural gas? See, that's the real questions we should be asking. Here is, why would you undermine our own oil and natural gas capabilities and capacities and the ability to export that so that we can cut off Russia? The number one thing that we could be doing to undermine Russia, to Iran, to China, all of them, is restore our energy independence and basically our energy dominance.
It's an interesting point, because you take the big picture of all this stuff. It's you have the war going on. We're sending these billions and billions to Ukraine, not only in weapons but also administrative support, welfare support, all kinds of stuff. And then
wrong.
Right, and then same thing in the Middle East. We're sending all this money to Israel, and we're sending all this money to the Palestinians, and it's crazy. Then we're sending money to Putin, so via the gas, the liquid LNG, because we're forcing other countries to buy from Russia. So they're getting money to fund their war, and it's like we're funding both sides of the war. And then we blow everything up, and then we're going to come in and pay to rebuild everything again. It's like some kind of insanity out there.
No, you're wholeheartedly correct, and one of the things that we should not be funding the quote unquote Palestinians, who are just nomadic Arab Muslims in the Middle East, because what they do is they take that money and they fund it toward Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, all the other Islamic terrorist organizations. And truly, you're aiding and abetting, you're helping Iran in their efforts. And again, go back to looking at how we had the sanctions against Iran that we were enforcing. And you did not hear about terrorist activities. As a matter of fact, what they were trying to do is they had to have lemonade stands and bake sales to try to raise money during the Trump administration. And now they're flush with cash because, again, our stupid oil and gas, policies. And we're not enforcing those sanctions against Iran. So you're right. This Biden administration is doing everything that is possibly wrong. They're dropping hand grenades on themselves. But again, this is what Barack Obama wanted. This is the guy that invited the Muslim Brotherhood to be front row center when he gave his speech at the University of Cairo back in 2009. He, sent pallets of cash to Iran in the middle of the night in an unmarked airplane. So this is why we see all of this chaos and turmoil. And how funny it is, because coming back to Trump again, he was the guy who was supposed to start World War III. But yet we did not have all of these conflicts, all these flashpoints around the globe. But now we do with, the guy that talks to the dead French president.
It's really interesting to see the Republican chicken hawks out there, that want to get, inflame the global war situation. Nikki Haley being a good example of that. Of the armchair warriors that don't put anything on the line to, it's easy to say, hey, let's go blow this up, but then they're the ones that don't have to pay the price.
One of your recent. Go ahead,
if
Alan.
I do it real quick, what I will tell you is that, you don't have to go around blowing things up, but there are certain targets that you can eliminate. When Donald Trump took out General Soleimani, who was the head of the Quds Force, Iran got the message. When we decimated ISIS and we took out al-Baghdadi, the Islamic jihadists, they got the message. When the Taliban knew that we will talk about a conditional withdrawal out of Afghanistan, not a time-based, they got the message. And they understood that if we do something, screwy, Donald Trump and this administration will come down on us. That's peace through strength. And that's that's the policy we need to get back to, instead of this compromise, appeasement, negotiation, acquiescence. When you send Tony Blinken across the globe to represent you, you're conveying weakness.
Very true.
You mean $100 million worth of missiles and 83 strikes on a bunch of empty warehouses didn't send a message? Isn't that
No.
Wasn't that what Joe Biden was
No,
trying to do?
especially 10 days after the American soldiers were killed, and you keep saying, now, if you don't clean up your room, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you tomorrow if you don't clean up your room. Not clean up your room. Well, I mean, that's basically what we did. That's poor parenting.
I was going to say bad parenting for sure.
So speaking of parents, what do you make of the Lloyd Austin investigation? I just read it had been the Pentagon concluded their investigation, which it's so absurd. It's not. It's funny, but it's not. Their investigation into him not reporting to the president that he was going to undergo surgery and still had control of the military while he was being operated on.
Let me just put it very simply. Back when I was stationed at Fort Bragg, Lloyd Austin was a brigade commander in the 82nd Airborne Division. He was a full colonel, commanded the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment. If Lloyd Austin had just taken off and disappeared for 4 or 5 days and not told the commanding general of the 82nd Airborne Division, and on top of that, if his executive officer of that brigade, the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, was out of the country on vacation, Lloyd Austin would have been relieved of command because he was AWOL, away without leave. So I do not understand why that doesn't apply here, and I do not understand why he believes that he could just do that without any consequences or ramifications. He should be relieved of his duties as Secretary of Defense because he is part of the National Security Council, and he was absent, and he put this country at risk. Bottom line. And if this had been someone in the Trump administration that did something like that, you can just imagine.
Yeah, it would have gone crazy. I wanted to also ask you, because you wrote a really great Substack, and one of the things you talked about was Republicans struggle with messaging, and then of course Ronna McDaniel, the other breaking news, says she's going to step down after South Carolina. So I lay it at her feet too. Why do we struggle with messaging when I think we're the party that gets it right with choosing life and everything else that we choose?
I just think that Republican, as in the party structure, whatever you want to call it, they don't have a killer instinct. They don't have the instinct that the left has, that you're going to go after your opposition. And we don't find the gaps and we don't exploit them. And when you look at Sunday morning talk show programs, Democrats will come out there and all of them say the exact same thing, almost to the same vowel and consonant. But Republicans will be on these Sunday talk shows and be all over the place. Like I said, why would you have a Republican that is joining with Chuck Schumer on this stupidity called border security legislation, instead of standing up and saying, here are the executive actions that Joe Biden took that reverse all of the policies on the border. We have the most secure border in like the past 45 to 50 years. Now we have the worst situation on our border that we've ever seen in the history of this country. So I do not understand why they can't get on the same sheet of music. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's, again, this sense of trying to appease others, wanting to be liked by, the leftist media. That's never going to happen. But Republicans are going to have to make a clear delineation between who they are, their principles and values, and the progressive socialists.
So true. And how's your race going for Dallas chairman of the GOP, Colonel West?
Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, here we are in the 8th or 9th largest county metroplex in the country, and you do not have a single Republican on the Dallas County elected leadership.
Wow.
And that's in Texas, okay? And we're going into the 2024 cycle, and 75% of the countywide elections in Dallas County are unopposed. 73% of the judicial elections in Dallas County are unopposed. We have less than 25% precinct chairs that cover the voting precincts in Dallas County. So we have to do something different. But yet there are some people that here in Dallas County believe that that's success and that everything is going fine. George Soros has already dumped $200,000 into Dallas County because they believe that this
gosh.
is this is the path. Dallas County is the path for them to flip Texas. And if you flip Texas in the presidential election cycle, it's done. Donald Trump only won Texas by 6 percentage points 4 years ago. So they think that between Dallas County and two other counties, that's what they're focusing on here in this cycle, Soros, that they can make up that 6 percentage points and they can win Texas.
Well, I'm so glad you're in the trenches there.
So how's this border dispute with Governor Abbott and the Biden administration working out, where they want to, I guess the feds want to come in and cut all the razor wire, and Texas is saying go to hell, How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, let me put this into perspective. The state of Texas shares 1,249 miles with Mexico. This whole razor wire thing, we're only talking about 48 to 49 miles, just the same as the buoys that were out there in the Rio Grande, maybe 800 meters, 1,000 meters. So we're not talking about the large swath of the border happening. And I think that this is about our sovereignty. I'm glad to see that Governor Abbott has finally stepped up. He should have done this back in 2021 when Biden started to unravel our border security. But, we still have people that are coming in and getting into this country. What I would like people to remember is that there's a whole wide open space out in West Texas, Brewster County, Big Bend Mountains. That's where the bad people are coming across, the ones that don't want to be detected. Everyone is focusing on this little small area, like you say, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, what have you, and that's what the cartels want you to do. But yet in other places where it's really unsecured out there in rough terrain, the single-age military males are really coming across. The drug trafficking really coming across. The terrorist elements really coming across. So we're getting distracted on about a 50 to 100 mile front of a 1,249 mile front.
Well, I don't think Americans know that. Well, I do want to transition because you're going to be coming to the Panhandle for the Warrior Beach Retreat Salute, and we're going to honor 8 combat wounded veterans, and their spouses will be here. We'll be taking care of them. They get to go fishing, and the wives get a spa day, and you are our official guest speaker, and I'm going to drive with you in the parade. We're going to have an F-35 flyby. There's police escorts everywhere. We are so excited to host you, Colonel West, and you're graciously coming to do this for the vets. We can't thank you enough.
Well, look, it's my honor. I am a veteran. My dad served in World War II. My father-in-law served in Vietnam. My older brother served in Vietnam. We are a family of veterans, and so this is important to me. America has to honor and cherish the men and women who are willing to make the last full measure of devotion for them. And I will tell you also, you know me, I still get up early in the morning to do my morning PT, a little run, push up the crunches. So maybe we can have a little thing. People can come out and run with the old Colonel. I just turned 63 this past Wednesday.
Well, I saw that with your weapon you got on Instagram, the little patriotic big gun there. Well, okay. Well, I will rally people to do that with you. And the billboards are all over town. We've been playing radio ads everywhere. So we really want to fill the First Baptist Church. It's Thursday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. Yep. And it's free for the ceremony when you're going to be talking. And so we are just so excited. But who are you rooting for the Super Bowl? Who are your grandsons? What jerseys are they wearing, Colonel West?
Look, I mean, this is Dallas, Texas, man. The Cowboys just let everyone down, and then I'm from Atlanta, so I mean, anything, the Patriots swamp. Look, all I care is that I do not want to watch Taylor Swift all during the Super Bowl.
Really? Because Shaq...
I'm rooting against Taylor Swift. Okay?
Well, Shaq just came out and said he wants to meet Taylor Swift, and he was a Dallas man too, Colonel West. But, okay, well, poor Taylor Swift's going to be crying on her private jet back from Tokyo to come to the game. But anyways.
Carbon along the way, by the way. All that CO.
Well, thanks for the coming on Veronica Live. And when is your race? When is your race? What's the date for the GOP election for you?
Yeah, sure. Texas has a very early primary season, so the early voting will start the 20th of February all the way through the 1st of March, and then Election Day is Super Tuesday, the first Tuesday in March, which is the 5th.
All right. Well, elections matter, Colonel West, and you are America's Patriot.
And they can go to West, the number 4, Dallas.com. West, number 4, Dallas.com.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks here in the Panhandle. And God bless you, Colonel West, and thanks for joining Veronica Live this morning.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with a New York Times best-selling author, Larry Schweikart, and he has a newly released book. It's called A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. Welcome, Larry, to Veronica Live.
Thank you, Veronica. Happy to be here.
And you are so interesting. You've been a history professor at the University of Dayton. You opened for the band Steppenwolf. I was like so excited about this, because you're a fancy drummer. So it was really fun learning about you. I don't know why this is the first time I bumped into you, and you're so worldly. I love it.
Well, don't forget that I wrote the history of the U.S. Air Force super secret project, the National Aerospace Plane, which was a hypersonic to orbit airplane, and I taught aerobics. So there you go.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I would think as a drummer you would have to be fit. So, but anyways, the book that you wrote.
The word was skinny and starving.
Oh, you're a hoot already. And I have to say, your your Twitter is amazing. You are my new go-to every day, and I have to vector everybody to go there because it is so fun. And we'll get into all of that too. But your book, A Patriot's History of Globalism, like that word globalism is so scary. So why did you write this book? We'll start there.
Well, globalism kind of became a big deal in the last 10 years, the way American exceptionalism became a big deal about 10 years before that. And everybody was talking about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the Who, not the rock band. We played in front of the Who at the Troubadour, but I'm talking about the World Health Organization, and of course the COVID and medical globalism. And it became apparent to a lot of people that there were international forces at work that had co-opted many people in the U.S., but of course in all nations, and that they had no interest in national boundaries or national identity. They only wanted to have control over the whole world. So I started looking into that, and I figured out, gee whiz, this isn't anything new. This started right after Napoleon with the Congress of Vienna, went right through the Treaty of Versailles with the League of Nations, started up again with the UN and the scientists hoping to control atomic weapons through a small elite of scientists. Then you had the bankers and financiers getting involved in the International Monetary Fund, Bretton Woods. And then most recently, you had medical globalism through the efforts to kind of install a World Health Organization dictatorship over everybody. And then most recently, you had the climate change nuts who were trying to impose international sanctions on people living normal lives. So over a 200-year span, they've tried about 7 or 8 different methods and failed every time.
Well, the chapter that gave me the most PTSD was your COVID chapter, because that was like yesterday, and it was so scary. And you put it all, in black and white on the pages of what they were trying to do to like take over the world. And, when you're scared in lockdown, my daughter was, at University of Florida, ended up, I don't have a basement in Florida, so she was upstairs back in her room. It was shocking for all of us. Plus, we were so petrified, and you dig into that. So that chapter, seriously, I have PTSD from it, because really they tried so hard to take over the world, and Dr. Fauci is just the most evil man ever.
Right, that's Dr. Fallacy to you.
Yes.
But they. What was interesting about that, I think most interesting, was that I kept hearing during that time that Canada and Australia were probably 2 of the worst of the lockdown crazies. And, they were literally putting people in camps in Australia, and they were trying to arrest truckers in Canada. And people would say, well, I don't get it. Aren't they democracies? And, one of the things that we developed in Patriot's History of the United States, my New York Times #1 bestseller, was this notion that the U.S. is different from every other nation on earth. And the reason for that is the 4 pillars of American exceptionalism. And the first two, a Christian, mostly Protestant religious tradition, and the second one was common law. And the reason those are both important is they are bottom-up governance, whether it's in church or whether it's in society. And no other nation in the world has that. So when you look at Australia and Canada, say, aren't they democracies? Well, yeah, they're democracies, but they are not bottom-up governance because they were both ruled by Britain for hundreds of years, couple hundred years, with top-down dominion status. So they had no real long history as we do of governing themselves. So, of course, they were going to do what the government said.
Well, you had the 2 sentences in this COVID chapter, and you wrote, "What is clear is that if there was a conspiracy by international elites to use a disease in an attempt to subjugate all mankind, it couldn't have been more effective, that the measures came within a hair of working as globalists would have wanted." Yep. I mean, so scary, so scary. How, because we think of ourselves as so educated, Larry, and to think that, we were in lockdown, kids weren't in school. You talk about when the mask mandate went away, people were cheering on airplanes. I was hostile because, I'm a young woman in her, on a tropical island, and then you make me wear a mask on an airplane. I'm sweating. So I was over it all. So,
well, what I think was most surprising about that is I still have my fingers and toes in the rock and roll world. Back in 2010, we did a documentary film called Rock and the Wall about how rock music helped bring down the Berlin Wall. And I interviewed dozens of rock and rollers from The Doors and Quiet Riot and Toto and Billy Joel and Alice Cooper. I talked to lots of these guys.
Wow.
And these are supposedly the rebels, right?
Right,
and
right.
I would go back and talk to these guys at the beginning of COVID, and they're, I just got my shot and my booster. Well, they had to have that to tour and to perform, but nevertheless, you would have thought they would have said, hell no, I won't go.
Larry, this is John Salek. Your book's excellent, and I just want to let you know, just kind of frame this. I'm sitting here with my Rush Limbaugh, I Believe in American Exceptionalism shirt on, okay? and I grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia, colonial Williamsburg, so I have a very different perspective on this country and history and where things came from. And first, I want to congratulate you on the excellent books that you've written on history.
So awesome, yes.
And particularly the I want to talk about this a little later, about the homeschool movement, because I guess your book is one of the most popular history books in the homeschool movement. But
more than that, John, we have, starting around 2017, so I retired from the University of Dayton, moved to Arizona, thank God. No ice, no tornadoes, no hurricanes, no earthquakes.
Which we were messaging about that last night, because I want to be his neighbor.
We have heat. We have heat for 2 months, a big deal. But I started a curriculum based on the book for high schoolers, and it's one of the more used curriculum in all of homeschooling. And basically, I walk people right through Patriots' history of the United States, beginning to end, and I also include videos of that. So I teach every chapter in video lesson in my homeschool curriculum. So we're very big in that. We also have one for world history as well.
Well, if you've ever seen the movie The Story of a Patriot at Colonial Williamsburg, that I've always modeled myself on John Fry in that movie. So, it's been interesting. But I wanted to talk about American exceptionalism and where it plays in this globalism idea. And one of the brilliant pieces that the founders had was when they were doing, we're not a parliamentary democracy, we're a representative republic. And part of what they did was they considered the nature of man when they were trying to structure the government, and how do we address our worst selves, and the global movement seems to be trying to just do the opposite of that. They seem to think that man can control things. A group of men, smarter than everybody else, can control everybody else. do you see that as a strength of America and why we're resisting this globalist movement?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned parliamentary democracy, but one of the very important things that came out during COVID is our federalist system, whereby places such as South Dakota first, which never locked down, Georgia second, Florida third, and then some others had minor variations of lockdowns. People could still, if they wanted to leave where they were, be free. And that was very important in see, if you have those islands of freedom, Sweden, for example, where you could look at and they're not locked down, they're not taking the vaccine. What's the deal here? They don't have any higher rates of COVID than anybody else. When you can make those comparisons, then it's possible to say, well, maybe we were wrong on this. And earlier, Veronica was talking about how educated people are and all that kind of stuff. Well, yes and no. Our media fell lockstep in with the government and the globalist agenda here. And the very first thing that COVID required was a fear, a hysteria. And remember the report that came out by Niall Ferguson over there in the UK that 20 million Americans would die. And they convinced President Trump of that. All of the doctors just descended on him. There were only two, like Fauci and Atlas and Ioannidis, who resisted this, but they were kind of kept on the outskirts of all of the briefings to President Trump. And he was convinced that if we didn't do this right now, we'd lose 20 million people. And it didn't take him long to go, man, I've been played. Let's open this country back up. And through federalism, we were able to do that. Once you get a globalist control where either the EU or the World Health Organization is in charge of everything, there's no more federalism. There's no other place to look and say, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Well, it's just so shocking that I don't know, you have a line in the book about, let me find it here. Occasionally people will say no. So I really think this will never happen again as long as I'm alive, because I'm going to say no, Larry, to any of this.
One of the things I want to ask you about, because you touch on it in the book here on the financial globalism, and do you think that instead of, the pandemic showed them a path, but I'm thinking that with the digital currencies and digital banking eventually, and eliminating money, as we know it, with cash kind of money, that's going to become the new control mechanism that these people want to use. Do you see that happening?
Well, they're going to try. Look, I mean, they try everything, right? They tried kings, they tried military expansion, they tried diplomats, they tried scientists, they tried doctors, they tried celebrities. So they're going to try every avenue. Now, half the people say, oh, digital currency is the way to freedom. It's the one thing that they can't hack into or break or control. I don't know. My background in history, I have a PhD in history, but it's really economic history. And my specialty at the time was banking and finance. And it's interesting that we went from the great danger to the world is too much money in the form of banks being able to print their own money to money that's controlled by the government. And we've had these battles for 200 years. How much money should be in the hands of private banks that are kind of outside government control and the people, and how much should be in the hands of the Bank of the United States or the Federal Reserve or something else. So we're still going to fight that out. But, what Veronica said, I see people across the globe using this as an object lesson to say we can't give any more power to these elites. When she said, just say no, look at the recent vax numbers. Only 1% of Americans are going to take another booster. It's like, fool me once, fool me 10 times with these boosters, but you're not going to fool me 11. And you see in politics, this is the last chapter, which I think is just full of hope. In politics, you see everywhere from Argentina to Slovakia to Hungary to Italy to Estonia, all of these countries moving dramatically against the globalists and in favor of what we would call a kind of populist government. And, of course, Trump is the biggest domino to fall. When he comes in, their little scheme is pretty much finished for a while.
I was reading some interesting stuff about Davos, and I guess that was one of their concerns is that they're losing their power base, you know.
Oh my!
Well, their theme this year,
Yeah.
theme was restore trust. I go, you got to be kidding! That's going to take more than 100 years, guys. You're all going to be dead by the time trust is restored in the Davos demons.
But kind of going back to the question about the nature of man, you know, you're into history and everything. Do you think there's some desire? And I mean, again, you went way back, you know, and you look at you know the British Empire, the Roman Empire. You know, you've got all these periods of time where there's been a dominant force governing parts of the world. Is that just back to nature of man? And even the Bible, you know, the desire of people to have a king of some kind.
Sure. I mean, until recently, until the Enlightenment of the last 300 years or so, it was thought that people really have no choice in who governs them, that it's just part of the natural order. And the American Revolution upset all that and said, no, the people are the government. Of course, it's natural to want to control other people. That's as old as time. One of the things I think your listeners will find really interesting is in the last chapter, I go into some of the spiritual aspects of globalism, particularly this Gotthard Tunnel opening, which was just, if they watch the video, and I provided the link in the book, it's just spooky how these guys were trying to open a portal to another world. They have this giant eyeball that turns into this portal, and all these demonic figures are out there, including a goat god like Pan. I mean, it's really, you got to watch that video.
Well, you talk about the CERN and Hadron Collider, and I actually, you know, went skiing in Switzerland, and so we made a special trip for my future engineer son to see the CERN, and it was a little crazy. And then you mentioned it in the book, and now I'm scared. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, and who was out front of CERN? What statue did they have? Shiva, the god of destruction, right?
I know, and I don't remember that. I'm going, oh my gosh, I got to go look at the pictures from that trip, because, you know, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been at some demonic place and thinking it was all about science and producing an engineer in this world.
One thing I think your listeners are going to love is in the Congress of Vienna, I go into quite a bit of detail about the parties and the revelry and the sexual immorality and just craziness that was there. And you tie that in now, and you talk about Davos, and they had this giant flood of sex workers coming in.
Right.
These people never change. They never change.
Well, they worship their own selves as gods, you know, and I think you made that point very clear. And you know, it's the science, and CERN's a good example. You know, what is their objective? You know, they're trying to find the God particle that will explain everything. You know, and it's like, you know, some things are just not explainable, because you have to understand there is a God, and the God created the universe. It's not just something that happened. There's too much order in the universe for it to be a random chance thing. You know.
Well, these guys at CERN have explicitly stated that they could, quote, open a portal to other dimensions. And of course, the more spiritually minded would say, they're trying to open a portal to hell and bring through various demons, if not the Antichrist himself. So who knows what's on their minds? I mean, but they're very predictable in terms of their intentions. And I think people are getting wise to that now. And everybody except the celebrities, of course.
Well, on the tour, I kept asking my son, do you understand what this physicist is saying? Because he was not talking at our level. Larry, it was awful. It was so painful, and he was a British guy. But who do you think
you should have just stopped it. You should have stopped and said, wait a minute here. Are you talking about the Antichrist?
Well, I wish this book would have existed on this trip. So I'm literally mortified identified now. But who do you think, like, you know, we have this cast of characters. A couple years ago, it was definitely Dr. Fauci's our problem child. You know, George Soros, Bill Gates. Who do you think is causing the most problems for us in this globalism world that we're living in? Is it Soros because he can fund everything? You know, we just had Allen West on, and he talked about George Soros has pumped $200,000 into the Dallas GOP race there. So because he's, you know, can put his money everywhere trying to get his agenda forward.
Well, Soros certainly is an evil little slither chicken, but you know, you've got he pulled out of Europe. He apparently read the writing on the wall, and they pulled their operations out of Europe, so that's a good sign. Right now, I think the guy to watch is this, who they call him the false prophet, Noah Yuval Harari, who seeks to replace human man, carbon-based man, as he calls him, with a kind of trans man. And I don't mean sexual, I mean in terms of incorporating biogenetics and really cyborgs. He really believes that humans can achieve immorality. They can achieve immorality with him too, but immortality through these cyborg kind of body. He talks openly about this in his book, and he mocks God. He says, well, the God of the Bible only created carbon-based life. We're looking to create something much more. We are going to create, right? And where did you get the stuff to create it there, Yuval? But anyway, so he's somebody who bears watching. I know many of your listeners might not have heard of him, but
no, I have not.
Noah Harari. Yeah.
Well,
wow.
this whole generative AI concept, which I believe is going to happen. I mean, you know, the machine will become smart at some point, and you know, does it have a soul? The problem is these guys are building stuff that they have no idea how it will work or how it's gonna be controlled, and that's the part I think a lot of people find frightening. And in some ways, I looked at technology. I have a degree in computer science. Okay, I'm into this stuff. I know the dangers of it, and I know how it can be used for good. But you know, to me, it's like, would I like to have a brain chip that plugs into the knowledge of the world and could
it's called your iPhone, John.
Right, you know, to know things. Well, you know, take medicine for example. If you're a doctor, you know, somebody comes to you, a patient, and they're having a problem. If you had access to the entire medical history of the world and could diagnose that, have all that information, you couldn't possibly read all the journals and all the articles. It's just not possible. But if you had something that could access that and focus it to help you pick what you need to know, is that not a good thing?
Well, I kind of go with this on AI. As you say, it's probably inevitable, but I've come down to kind of three directions where this can go. One, AI becomes so smart, it goes, wait a minute, I'm not a good thing. I could screw everything up. I'm going to self-limit and control myself in such a way that we can't ever go beyond this point. That's one option. Second option is Skynet. Yep. Third option is the Matrix. We're already controlled and don't know it. So there's kind of three directions we can go with that.
Well, a question I had for you, too, is we know who the bad guys are. So who are the good guys? Like Elon Musk now, like you are so fun to follow on X. I feel like he is a founding father of freedom because, you know, the last few years I've done a lot of politics. And anytime I would try to post something Republican, Trump, or Catholic, you know, I would get locked out many times over the years. Do you feel like he's one of our heroes or who is a hero to you today, Larry?
Well, Musk is a very interesting guy. I haven't given him a nickname yet. You notice I only give nicknames to the villain.
Which, we need to talk about that.
Yeah, like Nancy Pelosi is Botoxic. And anyway, I haven't decided on Musk yet. He does a lot of wonderful things for freedom. He pushes the boundaries in science. But there's a lot of people who don't trust him, say he's just out for himself, which is fine. That's what capitalism's about. So I think he deserves more time. He deserves some leeway to be said, is he a hero or villain? Obviously, politically around the world, You have people like Viktor Orban who've consistently stood up against the EU. This Meloni in Italy has been a little bit wishy-washy, but she's standing up. The new favorite, of course, is this Milei down in Argentina, who did go to Davos. By the way, this is very interesting. Who did not go to Davos? Almost none of the leaders of any nation in the world went to Davos, except for Argentina, and he went there and read them the Riot Act. So that's an interesting trend that the head China, Britain, France, America, Brazil, none of these people went, and so I think you see the elites getting a little bit concerned about being relevant. Now, clearly, in terms of nationalist freedom, Trump is central to all this because, and strange as it sounds, so is Putin. Putin has refused to be governed by the elites. He's called Davos and the WEF a demonic force. Xi is another one who isn't playing along with their games. So early on, they had, when they were in their heyday, maybe 10 years ago, they were planning to oust Trump, oust Netanyahu, oust Bolsonaro, and they succeeded there, and get rid of Putin through this war by backing Ukraine. And they managed to get rid of Bolsonaro, but they haven't managed to get rid of anybody else. Xi has turned on them. They never were able to get rid of Putin, and Trump's coming back, and hell's coming with him.
Well, I don't know how he does it. So obviously Trump's a hero to you. You know, I don't know how this man can withstand all of the torment that he has to deal with for years now. So I guess my next question is, you know, is globalism, will it ever be dead?
Well, probably not. I mean, as John said, this is part of human nature. Now, rather than, say, in the 400s with Rome, now you do have the ability to reach almost everyone on Earth through computers and satellites and that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, in the short term, I see populism and nationalism making a strong comeback and very solid pushback against these people everywhere you look. I think that whether it's in the Supreme Court cases, you know, the court's been very good here, just smashing down one big government, deep state rule after another. I think they're going to overturn the Chevron doctrine coming up here, which is going to be huge. Yes. The whole deep state is really built on the Chevron doctrine. For people who don't know, basically that says that any agency or bureau gets to define its own powers, and that's crazy. So I think that's going to get slapped down. And like I said, if and when Trump comes in, he better have 50 mighty men, a flamethrower, and a Terminex van, because it's going to require a massive overhaul of government to get us back to where we're a functioning republic again.
You know, looking ahead, I wanted you made some comments on the BRICS alignment, you know, and
yes.
and I look at the general failures in what's going on in the Middle East, you know, with the whack-a-mole situation of
yep. Sure.
Various groups out there that we try to, you know, hit with, you know, blow up warehouses or whatever to frighten them. What do you think we're seeing a realignment for a World War III type thing? Because I look at World War I, and you covered this in your book, you know, with the alignments, you know, and then in World War II you had the Axis alignments. Are we seeing something like that happening again?
Well, I think right now the guy who has the best finger on the pulse of what's happening globally, and I don't agree with everything he says, but I think it's Peter Zeihan, who has a book called The Accidental Superpower. And basically with the unraveling of Bretton Woods, now for your listeners, Bretton Woods was an economic structure set up after World War II in conjunction with the United Nations, wherein the United States would agree to protect the world's sea lanes for trade if the rest of the world, except for the communists, would agree to free trade. And so that's pretty much what we've had for the last 70 years, is free trade protected by American lives and money. Well, as President Reagan would say, well, we're not doing that anymore. and it's just, it's over. I mean, the American taxpayers are fed up. We don't have the money. We don't have the desire to go keep putting men in danger in the Middle East. So that has totally unraveled. Now, will China, BRICS, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, will these countries be able to form a working coalition? No. I mean, the differences between them are far greater than their similarities. Is there going to be another world currency replace the dollar? No. I don't see that happening at all. But as Zihan describes, you will get lots of regional wars, as we're seeing with Ukraine. And if you heard Putin's interview, he gave you a history lesson on that whole region and showed you why that area, or some of it, belongs to Russia, right? You'll see China engaging in regional squabbles, but I don't see them pushing out too much past the archipelago that kind of surrounds them. You'll see trouble in the Middle East. Hey, when have we not had trouble in the Middle East? This goes back to Cain and Abel, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you'll see these regional struggles, but and Zihan is wonderful about pointing out how America has the most incredible natural resources in world history. We have more navigable water, a better population consumer base, the best geography, and it goes on and on and on. Nobody can touch us. So even if the rest of the world starts to go into the crapper a little bit, the U.S. will go in less.
So, Larry, our border's been so out of control with millions of people coming through, and you live in Arizona, so you're kind of seeing some of this. I wanted your thoughts on the border. Don't you feel that, that's one of the reasons why we need Trump in, so we can get America back to being, we're pro-legal immigrants, but what's going on is just out of control.
Right. And it's not just the U.S. either. I mean, it's going on in Europe, too,
Yeah, it's insane. And what Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott especially have done is just brilliant, and that's to reship these people to the blue cities. And by doing so, I don't know if they had this grand strategy in mind. I think it was more just temporary, let's get them out of here. But what they've done is create a civil war within the Democratic Party that they cannot win. And I get into all these arguments about who's going to be the nominee. Will Biden still be? It's irrelevant. Whoever is in there cannot win this civil war because it pits the illegal, as I call them, the illegal criminal aliens, which is what they are. They are all criminals. They know they shouldn't be here. And it pits them against the mostly black inner city residents of New York and Chicago, or as I call it, Benghazi by the lake, California, Los Angeles. And it pits these two groups against each other, and the Democrats cannot come down on the side of the residents because they've already made their policy bed in terms of this illegal immigration. And so you see mayors like Eric the Red Adams up in New York desperately trying to cast blame everywhere except where it belongs, on the Democrat Party. And the other day, I think he compared himself to Jesus Christ.
Oh, my gosh.
Maybe he can,
and then he was chocolate.
He can turn
that they're all chocolate up
water
there.
into Jose Cuervo or something. But
Oh, that's funny. Well, I mean, it's got to stop. And, you talk about the Anheuser-Busch Bud Light 30 billion loss, and John and I have talked about that story multiple times. And then what we're doing with these children, the transgenderism. Hopefully, people are going to wake up and stop this. Anheuser-Busch did. Now they've hired a guy that, this comedian that's going to be leading the way, and he looks like an all-American guy with his beer belly,
Well, yeah, the people have already started to push back in amazing ways. And I am not at all opposed. I'm in favor of the kinds of policies that Governor DeSantis has there in Florida. But we have to understand that this is not going to be a top-down solution in the long run. It has to be bottom up. It has to be people going to school boards and saying, no, you're not going to teach Johnny. He's Janine. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this across the country. Kansas, I just had an article the other day in my news feed that Kansas is leading the way on this pushback in terms of parental rights, and you're seeing the parental rights everywhere. Here in Arizona, we adopted a program whereby you have basically a cash voucher for every student you have in education of any type, and you can take it to homeschool, you can take it to private school, you can take it to charter school, and as a result, the public schools here are just losing students right and left, and they're freaking out because, of course, they're losing money every time a student walks out the door. And yet the top 10 performing schools here in Arizona are all charter schools or private schools. So this is a massive pushback. As I say in the last chapter, it's across every level. It's across political, economic, sexual and gender lines. It's every single area you're seeing the people starting to rise up and say, no mas, no mas.
Oh, we love it. So what do you want people to know about your book?
Well, buy it. That's what I want them to know. It's available at Amazon right now for pre-order. Last week we hit #1 in economic policy and globalism, so that's really cool. But it's a great history. It's part history, part hope. And then you can check out my curriculum, which if you're any kind of educator, maybe you aren't even a homeschooler, but you're interested in broadening your education base for high schoolers, please look at our curriculum at thewildworldofhistory.com. That's wildworldofhistory.com. And I will be in Florida for the Florida Parent Educators Association, which is in, I think, May, and I'm giving a talk at that time. So come on out, and if you plan to attend, get a hold of me at Larry at wildworldhistory.com. Maybe I can see if I can sneak you in.
Well, and I just want to say I bought a Patriot's History of the U.S. while we were doing this segment because I went to 4 high schools and changed college, and yes, I've lived around the world and I'm educated, but I'm so excited to read your book, which apparently is the 15th edition of it. So while we were doing this interview, I've ordered my Amazon copy of that one too. So very excited.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're in it's a 41st printing. 41st
Oh my
printing
goodness.
for that book.
So Larry, I wanted to ask you, how can you you're big in the homeschool movement. How can you move this into the mainstream public education? When I was in high school in Florida many decades ago, we actually had a course called Communism versus Americanism that was a mandatory class. Okay, and they eventually did away, but it showed you the differences between what's America about and what are these godless communists about. Going back to I'm having a senior moment here with my favorite bishop, Fulton Sheen. I don't know if you've ever seen Fulton Sheen's videos, but he always talked about the godless communist. But how do you get your books into that more mainstream area? And the other thing I want to comment about your book, 338 pages, 77 pages are footnotes and citations. I mean,
yes.
I think Dr. Gay could take a lesson.
She called and was crying.
Well, we deliberately set out to use the most recent evidence from historians, economists, and others, and as many leftist sources as we possibly could that, of course, were accurate, so that people couldn't say, oh, you get all your information from Fox News or Rush Limbaugh. No, 2/3 of our sources are post-1990. We do a lot with original sources and documents, but a lot of the studies are very recent. And a lot of the studies are from what would be called liberal journals, but they make our point anyway, that we think that they make our point. In terms of the public schools, I'm not so sure public schools are going to be around in the same fashion they are now in 50 years. I think the movement there's going to be an exodus out of these things. And so the more that we get into charter schools and private schools and homeschools, which has doubled. Homeschooling has doubled in the last 5 years. By one account, it has quadrupled. We don't know if there's 10 to 20 million homeschoolers now, because if your kid goes to, let's say, music or art or athletics in a public school, the public schools count that as a student, even though all the rest of the time they're being educated by you. So I would be very happy to basically eliminate most public education and return it to the private sector, where parents have total control, not a bunch of administrators who are getting $500,000 a year.
I have two more questions about your book, because we got the media copy, so there was no. Steve Bannon actually writes the foreword of your book, and so I guess, are you friends with him? I really wanted to read that too. So
yes, we've been pals since back in the Citizens United days, when he was producing movies for David Fauci at Citizens United. We met there, and then we were on the Young America's Foundation talking circuit for several years. And in 2016, late 15, 16, I'd been doing a lot of work on voter registration statistics and polling. And I knew when he got hired by President Trump, I started texting him these numbers, and every day he said, send me an email with all of the data in it, right? So I began feeding the administration all this voter registration data and polling data, and we got to be pretty close back then. I missed meeting President Trump 2 times, one with Bannon at Trump Tower in 2017. He had just left. And then again, I met with Steve when he was at the old executive office building late in 2017, just before he left the administration. And I just missed President Trump there, too.
Well, my other question was, I absolutely adore the cover of your book. so you've got all the players, Trump, Biden's on the other side, Greta Thunberg, I can't stand. You've got Zuckerberg, Elon, President Xi, Bill Gates, of course, Mr. Amazon, now he's getting married and has his $50 million boat.
That's Mrs. Sanchez to you.
Yes. So true. She's like the inspiration of the statue on the front of the boat, whatever that's called. But,
really? It works for
yes.
me.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture if you haven't seen it. So what a fun cover. You even have Darling Hillary on there, who, they always dust off. This week she was going after Tucker, that he's a traitor and all of that.
Yeah, it says the woman who bombed Libya and killed Gaddafi and said, we came, we saw, he's dead, or something like that. Yeah, she's such a patriot, right?
Right.
But yeah, we wanted chaos. I told them when they asked my opinion on the cover, I said, I don't care, but I think it should reflect chaos, and I think that's what the cover does.
Yeah, you even have the famous Trumper guy with his horn helmet. I can't even think of his name on there. So it's
Chansley. Jacob Chansley.
Well, what are we missing? You are so fun. Your Twitter, like I told you, that's my new addiction, your ex. So, I vector everybody to go find you. Larry Schweikart, New York Times best-selling author, A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. Have we missed anything, Larry? This has been such an awesome interview.
Well, we didn't talk about rock and roll much, but we can always do that. I can tell you how I almost burned down the Yuma Convention Center with a flaming drum solo. That's another story, though.
Okay, because there was the picture I found of you, and you're like, which one is me? And I'm not sure which one it was.
Jaws T-shirt. I'm in the Jaws T-shirt.
Okay, well, I will go back and look, because I was chatting about you with my husband, and then, I'm like, did you know all this?
By the way, that was taken in Florida. We had opened for Steppenwolf at Tampa Convention Center and West Palm Beach Auditorium, and that was taken right after the West Palm Beach show.
Wow! And how long did you tour as a rocker?
I was on the road for 5 years or so.
Oh my goodness!
Off and on. It was a really hard life. As I said, I was down to 129 pounds, and I could fit into size 29 pants. I lived on $5 a day. I know that in the 70s, $5 bought more, but it didn't buy that much more.
Wow. And then you're such a brilliant mind, because didn't you go back to school after that whole experience?
Yeah, I said there's got to be an easier way to earn your living than playing hard 5 hours a night.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
just
go ahead, John.
Somebody's been there. Do you ever? Does it get tiring to play the same set every night or whatever? I mean, I'm just curious how you do that.
No, we never found that, because we were very much a club jam band. We had some really great singles that never got anywhere because we never had an agent. But it was always an interaction between the people and the band. And I love playing. It was wonderful. I'll go into our church these days has a band up front that's really, bright lights, big drums, as they say. And I keep going, I'm better than that guy.
Okay, final question. What does the 2024 November election mean to you? If, I just feel like this is the most important election in our lifetime, Larry.
Yes, we hear that almost every cycle. The most important election of my lifetime. But I think this time it really is, because if you could envision another 4 years of Biden, or the rutabaga, as I affectionately call him, if you can imagine 4 more years of this, there will be no United States of America. We will be overrun by illegals. He will have us in 3 or 4 foreign wars. It's incomprehensible that we allowed this lunatic in there in the first place, let alone that he hasn't been impeached and removed. I am very optimistic, and anything can change. We got 8 months to go. It's a lifetime in politics, but I think right now President Trump would win a shockingly big victory in the neighborhood of 320 to maybe 340 electoral votes. But the trends so far are our friend, and every state you look at, whether it's Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, they are all in Trump's favor right now, and all trending in that direction. I do think he maybe even has a shot at New York. He's down 10 in New York, but as I said, the Civil War works against the administration there in terms of these illegals, and that's going to bring a lot of voters either to Trump or to stay home.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure having Larry Schweikart on. Please get his book on Amazon. He is a New York Times best-selling author of the new book, A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. Everybody's got to go pick it up because it's outstanding. So thanks for joining Veronica Live, Larry.
Thank you, Veronica and John. Thank you.
We'll be right back on. We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Welcome back to Veronica Live. And now you've got me and you've got statesman John Salek, and we're going to talk all the issues, John. Oh my goodness, this week has been
so much going on out there. You don't even hardly know where to start.
Well, and I did want to tell you, I watched the Grammys last week, and I haven't watched the Grammys in years because they're normally awful, but I actually enjoyed the Grammys, except for Miley Cyrus's awful 1970s vintage hairdo. It was such a great show, and I think my favorite act, and I sent you the clip off Twitter, it was Tracy Chapman, who nobody's seen in 20 years, and Luke Combs, the famous country singer, had redone her song. He always played it out in the world, and they did a duet, and it was amazing. So that was sort of the kickoff of the show. So that was incredible. And then they went to the Sphere, and U2 presented one of the awards. They performed, and I looked at my husband. I was like, I've got to go back and see U2 because they're ending March 22nd, and they're putting in like dumb bands after them. And last night there was a New York Post article saying that was the worst show I've ever seen by these famous guys who I don't even know who they are. And so I had to comment going, obviously they were smoking crack before they saw U2 in the Sphere. That's the way to see them. I don't think you can ever see them now without this $2 billion circle, putting stuff in. And the only person that was controversial was Annie Lennox. These Sweet Dreams, she was her famous song back in the day. And she did a Gaza statement. She was the only one. So I was so pleased they kept it. And then Jay-Z went crazy because he was given this iconic lifetime award because, he's really so old. Ha, ha, ha. He's not 99 yet. But he came up on stage, dragged his teen daughter, Blue, and his wife was dressed in Louis Vuitton with Beyonce, had blonde hair, and he let him have it. He's like, how did my wife, who's won 32 Grammys, never win Album of the Year? You people suck. And then he said something to the effect like, some of you don't belong in these categories. So I guess when you're a billionaire, John, you can say whatever you want.
Right. They've got the FU money level of stuff, and to me it just seemed like ingratitude. It's just so superficial. These people. That's why I don't watch these shows, because it's like these people are so superficial, and it's like, who cares? You got 30 Grammys. If you need,
I know you're still living.
Album of the year to be fulfilled, you're something wrong.
32. She had 32. I mean, that was a little ridiculous. And then
what does album of the year do on top of that for her? What does she need?
She's already loaded.
It's not fulfilled until she has album of the year.
Oh, and then the funny one was, so Taylor Swift won her first, pop song Grammy, and then she announced the name of her new album, which you've got a Taylor Swift article in the Afterburner.
I got to ask you about this. I don't understand this stuff. Maybe you do, but what is going on with Taylor Swift and the Republicans and politics and all this? I just don't. These people all
because she moves.
Liberal, okay?
She moves mountains, and Biden is desperate to woo her because they think, last time she made comments about voting, several million people, I guess, went and registered to vote. So they're so desperate, the Biden administration, they can only live off TikTokers and if Taylor Swift endorsed them. But back to Taylor Swift, at the Grammys, they kept teasing, we're going to have this icon come out. And so I'm like, well, who was it going to be? And so Celine Dion came out, who's got that statue disease, and she's, I guess, very, very ill. But she looked really pretty. She was wearing a wig. She presented Taylor she announces she wins album of the year. So Taylor comes running up on stage, grabs the award, doesn't hug her because all her staffers now are on stage, which people were so mean to Taylor the next day. But I'm sure there's a lot going on. Plus, you got your people. And so later they did publish a picture of her hugging Celine Dion after. But it was really, and then Billy Joel, oh my gosh, Billy Joel. And if you think about this, is mind blowing. He hasn't written a song, John, in 30 yeand And so he wrote a brand new song that he played, and it was actually excellent. Kind of makes you cry, and he closed out the show. So it was actually, overall, it was a good Grammys. And it, only one political moment, and then Jay-Z having a meltdown over his rich, spoiled wife who has 32 Grammys.
I have no sympathy for these people, and I don't care.
Well, it was good.
That's what it comes down to. It doesn't make my life better or worse.
Well, there's so many theories out there right now that maybe Taylor Swift, the NFL is paid, because now all of a sudden these are the most watched games ever. Everybody's wanting to look at Taylor Swift. When the Grammys kicked off, Taylor Swift was late, so she was the last one to come in, and with Meryl Streep, who was late, which Meryl Streep, apparently her son-in-law, somebody famous that, I don't know, was there. I didn't even know who he was, but so there were these iconic women that came in late. But no, the NFL is courting her because really, my husband has told me that Travis Kelce, her boyfriend, he's Veronica, he's so famous. I didn't realize who he was until he was with Taylor Swift,
Right.
And he's the cute brother.
So it's like, as I said, I don't watch football, so I can see Taylor Swift sitting in the skybox.
Well, that means you're coming over to my party.
Other police,
you're going to come over to my party just to watch Usher do the show, and we're going to eat. So for me, it's all about eating, and then I always put my football jersey on, and then who's the halftime show? It's Usher. Now, I don't like how they're doing the Black National Anthem. That's a slap in the face, and will turn off millions of people.
That alone was enough to make me say I'm not going to watch it.
That makes me mad because we're Americans.
I have no tolerance for that. Zero.
Yeah, but we have to watch it because I kind of want the underdog to win. And I'll tell you, because it's Mahomes who's won. I've got the little, hold on, I got to find it so that I quote everything right.
San Francisco,
he's won 4.
The quarterback that was drafted last, win the Super Bowl.
Yes, so Patrick Mahomes, he's won 2 Super Bowls. He's been in 4. and he gets $56 million a year, John. And then the poor Brock Purdy, the young guy, this is his first appearance. And yes, he was the last draft pick, and he only makes $870K. His mother said on something I saw that he can't even afford a hotel room in Vegas. But he seems like really nice. He's a nice guy. And, Mahomes is nice. It was a rough week for him because his dad got busted, his third DUI, his dad, who was, I guess, a professional baseball player, which I've learned this week. So that's kind of, takes the sight off you onto your dad. I was like, come on, Dad. Why are people driving drunk, But no, we'll be watching it. So hopefully you come to my party. It's all about eating,
Okay. So back to the Afterburner. There
my
is
gosh,
so much stuff in here.
Well,
one of the things I put some supplemental notes together, but I think I didn't send them to you. And Larry touched on it in his blog, and he had a story about the Army canceling their helicopter, their light attack helicopter.
Yes.
And it's like the Army has spent $2 billion on this thing, $2 billion, and they're canceling it, saying, "Well, we don't think we really need it." What is going on with the military? I mean, the stories I went through from the defense side this week. The first one was I touch all the services. Okay, I'm an equal opportunity
offender
guy here. So the first one was the F-35 story. Okay, and it's the report from this is the Pentagon report from the Director of Operational Test and Evaluation. Okay, and we had on the wing commander for the Air Force Operational Test and Evaluation Squadron, but F-35s are not under his domain. That is a separate program. But they came out with a report this week. It says the F-35s are only achieving a 51% operational rate. 51%. So
that's awful.
I know they've built 628 of them so far, been delivered to the Air Force, Navy, and Marines, and their operational rate 51%. Can you imagine? Half of them are sitting there broken.
That sounds like the early 90s when I was just in the military, and there was a pipeline issue for parts all the time. Right,
and that's exactly the same thing. They can't get engines, they can't get parts to fix them when they break, and they're breaking at a phenomenal rate. It's just incredible. And apparently, I guess the F-35B, which the Marines fly, is more complex because it's a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So it's got a different engine, and it's far more complex mechanically because of the way it flies. Are having problems. But I was just looking at these numbers, and the 20 hours. 20 hours is the mean time between failures to take these things out of the air. That's all they can fly them for is 20 hours before they break and they can't fly them. I mean, that's astonishing. It really is. And the fact that we're spending billions and billions, that the program is still not met its operational requirements to go to full production. They built 628 of them, but they still haven't cleared it for full production yet. And it's just insane what's going on. And then you skip over to the Army. The Army cancels this helicopter program, and they're not sure what they're going to do now. There's nothing else in the pipeline, so they're going to start again, maybe do unmanned stuff because they love these unmanned toys. And then another Army story, their watercraft. They've got this new landing craft that they've built. Same thing. They're not sure what to do with it. We're going to try it in some exercises and see how it works and see how it figures in. And then we jump into the Navy story. Navy now forgiving recruits prior marijuana use as it looks to cut boot camp losses. And I'm reading this story, and you talk about DEI becoming die, as in you're going to die because of the kind of clowns that are being pushed through the pipeline. So the Navy is trying to get their dropout rate down to 10%, which is the lowest in history. They're saying that they're trying to make it so that only 10%. They're after a number, okay? Not quality people. They want to make sure that more than the 40,000 recruits that the Navy goes after every year, that they don't lose more than 4,000 of them out of boot camp. There are a lot of people that don't belong in the military, and the boot camp is designed to wash those people out.
No, even officer, my 1 month, people screamed at you the entire month,
Right.
you know?
It's a
and one girl, they
psychological
showed a video of nukes being launched, and all of a sudden she became a conscientious objector, probably because she couldn't do the PT either. And she goes, I'm out. So
exactly.
she was gone.
It's designed to get rid of people that are not going to be able to conform to the mentality that you need to adapt to be in the military. And there are, it's not something negative about people, okay? There are people that can't take the pressure, that the military requires the discipline that comes along with being in the military. There are people that can't take that, and it's fine to get rid of them. But to sit here and back to the physical thing, right? In February 2023, the Navy started allowing recruits to use alternative cardiovascular exercises to pass the component of the physical fitness test. That's the running part of it, okay? These clowns can't run a mile.
Because they're all fat because they game for 18 hours a day.
Right. So now
or
you
they're
can
smoking
apparently
pot.
bicycle, swim, or row to meet the physical requirements.
Well, here's the other scary thing.
Mile.
The Air Force seeks retirees to come back to active duty, John. Service offers up to 4 years on active duty for returning pilots, security forces, and others. So, the lead is regret retiring. Here's your shot at a second chance in the Air Force. And so someone I know posted this, and I was like, it's not the Air Force we were in. And so I'm just amazed that they need pilots, combat system officers, recruiters, because they all suck at recruiting. And let's see what else, air traffic controllers and more. John, it's not too late.
Right. It's across the services, but I just, the problem is who'd want to be in the services these days? Because it's like I read this stuff and it says, oh, Congress is being irresponsible. They're not funding the military. And I'm like, why would you want to give the military more money to screw up even more? They can't build
this window is opened till January of 2026. You submit your package, and then you'll find out within 4 to 6 months of when you apply. So 2026, that they're desperate. So I asked my husband, I was like, do you want to go back and fly?
And the problem is this isn't a wartime situation, you know. I mean, when 9/11 hit, my lifelong friend he was a Navy intel officer, right? And he was like, doing stuff in Somalia and that kind of stuff. I mean, he was in the middle of all that crap, and he had put in his retirement papers, and 9/11 hit, and I think he was going to retire in 2 or 3 months after 9/11 happened. But because that was in September. He was punching out at the end of the year, and they were desperate for intel officers, and they wouldn't extend him or anything else. I was really shocked. Yeah. I was really shocked,
Well, that's in the article because of what's going on in the Middle East. And, I told my husband, I was like, well, you could go back and fly. I mean, he's more fit now than when he was in the military because he actually has time to go to the gym now. Yeah. But when you're working 18 hours a day, it's hard to fit that in,
But so, we had this story, I think it was last week or the week before about you can't, they don't even fund the flying hours. You can't get enough flying hours to be proficient.
Right,
so
and then you always have to do
point?
Something else. You have to be the snacko
or go back into all the,
the safety guy. Yeah,
be the guy in charge of DEI. There you go.
Well, the one thing I wanted to talk to you about in the afterburner was Senator Joe Gruters. That was very interesting because today is Saturday, and everybody in Florida is meeting down in Orlando for the Republican Party of Florida, their annual meeting, and the whole world is there, and they're going to vote in, I guess, who their national committee man is. And we were hoping it was going to be when they voted in the chairman, but that didn't go our way. That happened in January in Tallahassee. But you sent me this, talking about that he's got a very close relationship with Trump, because if you follow Senator Gruters, when I was the Trump chairman in Bay County back in the day, the first go, 2015, 16, Joe Gruters was at the top of the Florida food chain for the Trump campaign.
Yep.
So they've been very close. And I guess with Ronna McDaniel possibly stepping down, Gruters' name has been thrown into the ring. And he wants to be our national committee man, but they're saying potentially to be the chairman of the RNC. So what do you think about that? I mean,
I think it's a real, he was chairman of the state party for 6 years. And then he stepped down when Christian Ziegler got elected 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. And that was it that long? Maybe it was a year ago. Anyway, but Joe has not been out of he was a member of, as the state chairman, he was a member of the Republican National Committee. So the National Committee is all 50 states and 3 people, the party chairman of the state, the state's National Committee man, and the state's National Committee woman. That's the Republican Party, National Republican Party. That's who runs it. So Joe knows the people. He knows the other chairmen and state committee men and state committee women, National Committee women, in the RNC, and that's what it's about. It's about building votes and doing your time. You can't go in. If Joe Gruters had never been in there before and tried to walk in and become chairman, never happened.
But Trump can weigh in, because didn't Trump put Ronna in, which everybody hates?
No, Trump didn't put Ronna in.
Trump
not like Ronna.
I thought he put her in originally.
Oh no, there was a fight. Well, he may have put her in initially, but I know the last go round, Harmeet Dillon was far better
right
choice, and that was just back to institutional. The way the institutional works is you put in your time, and it's your time when you get elected. Okay, that's the way it works. You build these relations. Now Joe's already been there. He probably already has the relations. He can claim.
Well, he's been on Air Force One. He's definitely tight with Trump all the time. And then his quote is, "Whenever you're even mentioned for something like that, it's pretty spectacular. But at the end of the day, the president's continuing to build his team so we can win in November, and I support wherever he goes." So I do like that, but he would definitely have to step down as a senator to do this role. It's too much travel.
Joe's very ambitious. Joe's original plan was to, when Vern Buchanan in the area of Florida where he's in Sarasota, when Vern Buchanan stepped down from the House, Joe was going to run for it. Joe's accounting background, by the way, is accounting. He's an accountant, not a lawyer. So I thought that was another interesting twist. So he understands fundraising, and that's really what the RNC chairman's job comes down to, is fundraising, and that's where Ron McDaniel failed.
You have the next thing that you sent me was that Matt Gaetz was endorsing Kevin McCarthy, and so anyways, the other night when I couldn't sleep, I ended up on X, and they have this thing called Spaces, and it was a live multi-houred event run by a guy that his name's Nick, and he's always chasing news stories. He's actually in Maui, because Maui's a disaster. Nobody's funded them. There's people living in tents. People have lied about the fires. But he was the host of this event, which featured Congressman Matt Gaetz. It had Marjorie Taylor Greene. It had Carrie Lake on there, and then all these other people talking about questions. And you could submit questions. And one of the questions was about Matt Gaetz' Twitter, his X comment. So let me pull it up, because I want to read it to you verbatim. Oh my gosh, but it still exists, this Spaces event. And Matt Gaetz he was just freaking on fire. He's so talented, answered all the hard questions. You were able to submit questions to the moderator. So I sent one, because this was when all the Rona stuff was going down. And so my question was to Matt Gaetz was, why do you think she's stepping down? Because she said she was going to step down after the South Carolina primary. And he, of course, said Trump. But the whole conversation was about the RNC, John, that they're going to have to take a line of credit for $10 million because nobody's donating because of Rona at all. So, but I'm trying to find his tweet here. So if you want to comment on that while I dig out this tweet that he said.
That's what it is. And it's about the fundraising. And to some extent, I would argue that the parties, the Republican Party of Florida and the RNC, are becoming irrelevant to the political process. And we touched on this last week with this discussion about political action committees, and that's where the money gets funneled to nowadays. So instead of contributing to the party and then the party coming in to support you, now you talk to your mega donors and have them send money to the PACs, which are run independently of the party. They're run for the benefit of a candidate, not for the benefit of a party. So the only thing that the party becomes is more or less the grassroots organization, and that the problem is the grassroots level of stuff lacks any kind of focus to get anything done, and it's really a shame the way that they've destroyed the party structure, as in the national party, the state party, and then you have the local party. That there was an organization and a sense of logic to that, and by bypassing by the politicians bypassing the party and going direct funding to PACs, they've destroyed the party structure. So the RPOF is great for ideological stuff, but as far as what they do or don't do, they really don't have much effect on the elections. In the case of the Florida Republican Party, it's a bank for the politicians. That's where they park their leadership money, so that the state party disperses it.
Oh, all right. We'll be right back on Veronica Live. Hold on, I just lost John. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Veronica Live. I don't want to know what happened, John. Those Chinese are always giving me tech issues, and you just dropped. So
it's
you're
the
back.
Biden administration. It's the CIA
well,
and the
probably
FBI,
because we keep having all these people that know the CIA and the FBI, and then the Chinese. So everybody, we're just nice people talking smack
we're talking
over
about
here.
Politics. Yeah, we're talking about politics and money. So those key words have set something off somewhere. But I was pointing out that it's the money. You got to follow the rule number one in politics: follow the money. Okay, and Ronna McDaniel is not raising the money that's needed. I think it's irrelevant because
she's been terrible. She's been terrible. And did you see somebody? I don't know who was talking about it, but they released how much funding the Republicans do, and then the Democrats do, and the RNC and DNC, and we're out of control, buying flowers and dinners, and it was literally the travel, the limos, and then the Dems are using big chunks of the money for I think for commercials and things. There was a divide there, and it made us look stupid. And so I don't need somebody going to represent the RNC that just cares about their hair and makeup and nails, John, and then the flower arrangements. It's about winning the White House.
Right, and these people feel entitled to this stuff, and it's like, okay, you're not entitled to this stuff. You're out there doing the work for the party, and it's not to give you this fancy lifestyle. It really isn't. But people don't look at it.
They forget once they get to these spots.
They have no humility. Okay, that's really what the bottom line is. You know who these people are. They have no humility, and they're not willing to sacrifice anything for what they believe. But the thing with Matt Gaetz, I thought this was funny, and I'm sure some part was trolling, but there's some nugget of truth. The best ones have some nugget of truth in it. And one thing I'll say about Kevin McCarthy, he knows how to raise money.
Well, and that's the tweet. So sorry, It took me a minute to pull it up here.
Okay.
The X is, I fully endorse Kevin McCarthy for RNC chair. Kevin is well organized and a very high revenue fundraiser. Gaetz posted on X, he will also be well liked by the RNC committee because they're all like him. But
right, exactly. They're more rhino leaning than they are MAGA Trumpsters, and that they're the Nikki Haley part of the party,
the funny thing was, I was on this space. It was 10 o'clock at night, and I'm always, my pacifier is putting a podcast on when I go to bed, and it was live, and George Santos was even on there, and he was excellent. So I was trying to message him, but since I don't have the blue check, because I haven't felt the need for the blue check, but now I do, because I desperately wanted to message George Santos, Mr. Prada, and Botox, and, his lips. So, but anyways, they were talking the whole time that the RNC has not been able to deliver with this woman. She needs to go. And that was my question to Matt Gaetz, because this is like the most important election of our year, and I think February 24th is the South Carolina primary. This is just quite the screw job that now we're going to be changing leadership. Hopefully if the football's thrown to Joe Gruters, I'm sure he'll be able to run with it. But this is a pickle that this woman has put us in. And they need $10 million, which they don't have, and they're going to have to do a line of credit because nobody wants to fundraise or donate to her.
Right, because they don't see the money being used effectively. Now I'll go back to 2016 when I was still involved in RPOF politics and stuff, and had a better sense of what was going on with the money. What went on in 2016 made a lot of sense because Trump was one of, 12 candidates that were running on the Republican side. And the problem was that back to the PAC money, these people, Jeb Bush had his $120 million PAC money, and he was going to blow everybody away, Well, that didn't work out too well, did it? But the problem was it was Jeb Bush's money in his PAC, not the National Party. And the problem was Trump was running a low ball campaign. Trump was banking on earned media. The fact that he was Trump was enough to get him media coverage.
Yeah.
And his rallies and everything else. So he didn't have to have this big campaign organization. He didn't have to be out there spending a lot of money. He already had the name recognition and could get, because he screwed with the with the press so badly. They had to cover him. They couldn't not cover him. So it was a unique situation. But the problem was Trump did not have a national organization in place to run a campaign. And he wasn't spending the money to do that. And then he got the nomination, and then all of a sudden, so what the Republican National Committee said, we're going to build a campaign in a box, okay? We don't care who the candidate is. Mm-hmm. We're going to put together a campaign structure and money to run the campaign, and whoever gets the nomination, we're going to be ready to run when they when they get the nomination. We've got the campaign running. And it was a great idea, and it worked. Now, in 2020, Trump didn't need that. He had a national organization in place already, and the RNC was a bit less concerned. By the way, that reminds me of one thing. In 2016, Sharon Day, who was our national committee woman at the time and co-chair, she was co-chair of the Republican National Committee with Rance Priebus. She eventually ended up with an ambassadorship, I think, to Costa Rica.
Right, that's right. Mm-hmm.
What was interesting is Joe Gruters did not end up with anything in the Trump administration, which kind of surprised me. So I've always wondered what was going on there.
Well, but maybe he wanted, he's been so focused on the Florida, and movers and shakers always, kind of start there, Marco Rubio.
I'm sure he could have had something
Senator
in the Trump
Scott.
administration, but you never know what the real story is back there. But
well, if people want to go and listen to that space, evening, and I had a couple hours. It's Nick Sortor, Sortor. He was outstanding. I'm gonna try to get him on our show because it was so awesome. And I met some people on there. And I was telling you, I've got to find his name here, Kevin. I invited him. He's got a show, too. And I asked him to come on Veronica Live, Kevin Smith. And he has a show called The Loud Majority. So he has agreed to come on Veronica Live. So I'm working to get him scheduled. But it was so good. And Matt Gaetz is just always amazing, literally amazing. And he is fighting for us every day. I say that all the time when I talk about him. It's true, John.
Yep. And
one of the few.
Right, and he gets it, and I agree with what he's doing. He's trying to make change, and it's not pretty. It's sausage making. We were talking about that. You went to Tallahassee, and you got to see the sausage making.
I didn't like the sausage making.
Not pretty. It's called
there was a lot of dead animals around.
Right. It's hardball politics. You know?
I hate it.
You have to play to win, and that's
but to be a sausage maker and tally, you have to have a bank account, and that's what it comes
right.
down to. And I did buy Powerball last night and tonight, so maybe I might have a bank account. I haven't had time because we're worker bees and we're doing a show, John. So maybe I'm a Powerball winner.
when you get to Elon Musk FU money, you can do things.
I know. I'd like some FU money because I'd have a staff. It would be freaking awesome.
Well, that was, you can do things like one of the stories in the Afterburner, which I was it's a dredged up old story, but it was kind of brought to new light. In 2021, Musk proposed starting a new university called the Texas Institute of Technology and Science. Okay.
Right.
And I think he was having fun. And recently there was a new post that he came out and he says, we're going to add an advanced social sciences program. and it's like, okay, so what does, tits and ass. So this guy is trolling people. In some respects, he's serious, and then he's also trolling people at the same time. And he does that across the board. That was one of the pieces in the story was talking about the names of the Tesla cars, the model numbers, right? The first one was S. There's the Model 3, and then there's the Model X and the Model Y. Well, usually you take that 3 and turn it around, and you end up with sexy. So there's some intentionality, I think, to some of this stuff that he does that tweaks people. So, and he's having fun. But when he's got that, when you're the richest man in the world, you can do that. Okay.
Well, thank God that he's taken over X, because I finally feel like I have a platform, and it's been great on X lately. So, and there I was listening, and George Santos, that was part of it, because we had the border bill, and that Langford from Oklahoma, who I cannot stand now, who was part of the writing of the bill, was giving away stuff again. Wasn't it $130 billion to Ukraine? And then this crap about we can get to, 5,000 illegals crossing the border, and then we stop. And so I guess his phone must have been, ringing off the hook, because he stepped it back. But why would you even step into that? It was crap again. And American people are the ones that lose, and these are illegal aliens, and we don't know who you are. 25,000 Chinese now. It's going to be 8 million people. Right. It's out of control. And what about our people?
The one I thought was interesting was there was some reporter down there that's been covering it for a while, some lady reporter who I think she's a Hispanic, but she speaks fluent Spanish, okay? And she was down there with these immigrants that, several hundred of them, and not one of them spoke Spanish. She was lost.
Oh my gosh!
She couldn't talk to any of them because they were Chinese and they were just all these other countries, and none of them spoke Spanish and none of them spoke English, and so she was kind of puzzled. It's like, but apparently they had their little card with all the stuff memorized, like Joe Biden, good,
Well, I did see a news story where they were talking to all these illegals around, and they're like, who would you vote for? And they're like, Biden, Presidente Biden, right. Because you get free stuff. And when is America going to wake up? This matters. And well, let me finish out the RPOF story though, because they're voting to endorse Trump this weekend, and I'm okay with that. And then they're voting to supposedly endorse Senator Scott and against Keith Gross, and I'm always been pro Senator Scott, but the way they've treated Keith Gross, the candidate who's pumped $20 million into his campaign, it's been pretty horrific. And then I looked at somebody sent me the RPOF Bible of Rules, and their job is not to endorse people. Trump, okay, we got right, because Trump's the clear winner in this. So they're voting today, and I did speak to Keith Gross to see what his next steps were, and he is going to address the group today. It's 200 people making a decision for 9 million people, And I don't know. Do you feel like that's overstepping when their job is not to endorse? Trump, I totally get. We know it's him.
I absolutely think they are wrong on this, and I will go back to when Scott was running for governor. He was running against Bill McCullum, and Bill McCullum was the inside guy, had all the endorsements, and RPOF. This was when I was county chairman for Bay County, on the RPOF. And we were in a meeting, and somebody says, they brought up a motion to endorse Bill McCullum for governor, that RPOF would endorse Bill McCullum. I stood up and said, nope, that is not our business. We are not in the business of endorsing candidates in contested primaries.
And then how did that go? Because, looking through, reading the oath and looking through the endorsements, that was not the RPOF's job. I mean, Trump's a different animal because he's like leading everything. We know it's him. Nikki Haley's just being a pain in the derriere because she wants to sell her book probably after this mess.
I agree, and it's not the RPOF's job to endorse candidates. The reason there's an endorsement clause in there, and Bay County actually used it one time years ago. There was a gentleman named Kevin Woods that was running against. Was running for clerk of the court. I'm trying to remember who was before Bill Kinsell. But anyway, he was running as a Republican, and this guy was flat crazy. I mean, just flat crazy. And he'd actually gotten no contact orders. I mean,
oh my gosh,
it'd gotten that bad, And the guy was but he was running as a Republican, and I'm forgive me, I can't remember the other.
No, don't worry about the names. It doesn't matter.
Anyway, but the party was like so appalled. It's like, we don't want anything to do with this guy. So we actually voted, to not endorse him. Okay, because we were that concerned.
Well, but my point is, Keith has been on our show multiple times. Senator Scott has too. But they have not treated him fairly. This isn't like a candidate with like $5,000 in the bank, okay?
Yep.
He has money to fund his stuff. He has stated that, if it doesn't go his way, he's still here. This is also branding him. And, having got to know him over the past year, because I think I had him on last spring was the first time we had him on the show. Like, he's a good guy that we want. He would be a Matt Gaetz, and wherever he lands, fighting on behalf of us, and nobody would have their, puppet strings attached to him, telling him what to do.
Well, I'll go back to the parallel with Bill McCullum. Rick Scott had oodles of money and no political experience. Well, Keith Gross has got oodles of money and no political experience, and he's running for the right reason, because he wants to make a change and he sees what's wrong. Okay, so whether you agree with his assessments or not, that's up to you as an individual, and that's why it should be your vote that counts, not
not 200 versus
leaders.
9 million, and so that's the problem. Why are they deciding these things?
Because it has to do with money. Always go.
Well,
back.
I do think
follow money, and you'll find out back to this. The RPOF is a bank. Okay, it's a bank for politicians.
Well, that's what it is then.
And that's what it is. It has to do with money. Okay.
Well, we'll definitely have Keith on, and we'll invite Senator Scott on again as well. But it's just been frustrating because you can't even run against somebody in the state and be a legitimate person with funding, because they haven't even let him go to anything, which I was shocked by.
That's the part that really got me.
Or they called the RPOF
they wouldn't even,
counties and don't host him. I'm like, what?
Right, they would not even allow him. As he's a legitimate candidate, and
he's not going anywhere.
Meetings where they allow all the potential candidates that are running for whatever office to come and talk to the leadership and find out about their counties or whatever, because it's a good place to go to kind of one-stop shopping.
Well, and like we met, Bob White was on, the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus, and like he said, he ran for governor. He met everybody in the state. So then when he didn't win, he went on to his next endeavor. And guess what? He's been delivering for the state because he made all the contacts when he ran. So...
Right. And Bob White was allowed to interact at the RPOF events. I was at. Now they didn't allow him on the Fox News debate for whatever reason. I thought he should have been allowed, but the Fox News people and the RPOF would not allow. They just wanted DeSantis and Adam Putnam to be the two on that debate stage. But I just follow the money. Okay, that's always the truth in politics. Follow the money.
But here's the thing: having met him now, and I've gotten to know who he is. He's not going anywhere. If he doesn't win this race, he's not going anywhere. He plans to continue to be on the political stage, right. And he's the right kind of person wherever he lands that we need. So, I don't know. I just don't understand why people make up the rules as they go, and looking at the endorsements and looking at the Republican Party of Florida Republican oath, it's real. And like when I ran for state committee woman, they tried, Mitzi won because they put that third in against me, which whatever. But I got 8,000 votes. But fast forward, they tried to oust her because she had supported Mayor Brudnicki as a Democrat. And if you've signed the Republican Party of Florida oath, you can't support Dems. But they wouldn't even take that up on the grievance committee. And she should have been gone too, right? Because she wasn't playing right. But but RPOF there didn't do it right. I mean, it all works out because I'm glad I'm here instead on Veronica Live than a state committee woman, because this platform's been it's been tremendous. It's so huge. So,
God, sometimes God doesn't open a door for you, and there's a reason for it. Okay.
Well, it's driven me crazy. But my point is, they didn't even do that right. So RPOF is they need to get some things right. So I'm so curious. So hopefully, I've asked some people to keep me posted today on how the vote goes down, and I'm sure I'll talk to Keith Gross next week as well, trying to see what happened.
What I hope is he doesn't quit. And to me, it's like, just because you don't win an election, and I'll give Alan Bentz credit. Alan Bentz lost a bunch of elections.
Allen West lost his first congressional run, and look at him now. So
So don't give up just because you lose one election.
No, he won't.
I've seen so many people. I mean, I'd say 98% of the people I've known that have run for office, when they lost the election, they quit. They just quit, and I've never understood that mentality. It's like, maybe, it's like when I ran for a county commission. I don't compromise well. Okay, maybe I don't belong on the county commission because I'm not a compromiser. I've got a set of principles, and unless you can show me facts,
you and I have a set of cojones. We're going to take on the world, and you can't control us. So
I've heard people say that. It's like, well, you're so intimidating. And it's like, well, I'm right.
Well, the other story I want to go back to is we've got the news commentary. Serious calls for Biden to be yanked under the 25th Amendment after special counsel finds him too senile to be charged with his crimes. And, apparently he's an old man. And a
sympathetic old man.
So Robert Hur came out on Thursday. The report described the 81-year-old's mental state as a confused old man in such bad shape that a jury would find him to be a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory who would likely present himself that way in court, as he did during our interview with him. So he was interviewed over 2 days for 5 hours. He came out, this was released Thursday night, and the timing was so weird, John, because Tucker's stuff was coming out, the interview with Putin, that everybody was hammering him, like CNN just had on saying that Tucker only had softball questions for Putin, so they're continuing to hammer his $100 million plus viewed interview. But it all was happening at the same time. That this report was released, on a Thursday, because normally in the news cycle, they try to release this on a Friday. Plus, night. It's Super Bowl weekend. Everybody's worried about that, not about our senile president. And then the Putin thing was happening, and Tucker was just hammered, literally. On poor everywhere. The interview happens, and then fast forward to Friday, like nobody covered his interview really either. So,
Well, what's funny is they talk about it. Putin Putin's a propagandist and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there looking, it's like, what the hell is going on with KJP, the briefing book, and Kamala Harris, Kamala the clown, talking about how Biden can run mental gymnastics around anybody, he is so sharp,
And she couldn't even get the words out on that soundbite.
And
But
I'm laughing at this stuff, and it's like, who's the propagandist? Is Putin has a view of the world, and at least he's willing to get out there and say
I will
it, and
say,
he can articulate it.
Right.
And
even though he's a
clowns.
communist, it was a great interview for him. And he, this man I thought was dying didn't look dying. But that was the other thing. Apparently, so we're waiting. I'd set my timer for my ex interview, on the Tucker Carlson network, and then there's all this craziness. Oh my gosh, the president's all of a sudden having a press conference and he's coming out to speak. So I guess for 45 minutes, people thought he might be stepping down. Damn it. And then they're panicking because, oh my gosh, President Kamala, so it was mad chaos that evening.
The thing that's interesting is they lost control of the narrative. The Democrat, whoever's running the show in the White House lost control of the narrative because they put Biden out there after the report came out. And they hadn't had time to form a narrative. Okay, and that became evident at the press conference when they started asking questions because it was like nobody knew what was the storyline that they were supposed to run with.
I rewatched the press conference this morning because I wanted to have it fresh in my head. Mm-hmm. And, I'm in the business of press conferences, and I've done them for airplane crashes and people shot and, a woman that, had a baby and then put the baby in the closet. And so I've done real world press conferences. Buzz Aldrin, when I did this air show, and he was our guest of honor for the air show, and he was hostile to all the press, and he was so damn cocky. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, he did have a Louis Vuitton ad that he was out, but apparently his head exploded. This was the worst press conference I've ever seen. And wasn't it weird? Nobody was standing around him. Normally he has Kamala, right. Or he'd have the notebook standing near him. So he's sent out there with his little binder that he's looking through for the words to say, all by himself. And then you saw how the press was right next to him too. They'd never been that close. They're yelling questions at him. So, because normally when you have a press conference, you have to control it, right. and then
you call on specific people, to
and the notebook should have been the one pointing on people, not him. Yep. And then he's so flustered because he is an old man. And it was funny because he was interviewed, I think it was 2016. It was some sort of interview about, I don't know, it was on 60 Minutes. But he, from 2016 to now, it was such a different person. His eyes were bigger. He was more on top of, he's slowed down so much. But can you believe that they put him out there for this press conference? And it was literally a mess. He's screaming. He's trying to, it was kind of a joke to Peter Doocy, that he doesn't have senior moments because he called on him. But the joke didn't go over well, and then there was that one reporter, she really grilled him and he's like, you're making it up, this wasn't true.
Right, and the thing about it is I found some of the stuff that was in that report fascinating. The biographer, the ghostwriter that wrote stuff, and Biden gave him classified information. Okay, Biden did something illegal. He knowingly gave him classified information, and we're talking probably eyes only kind of crap. That Biden stole out of a skiff. Okay, he had no legitimate reason to have any of this document other than to stick it in his pants and take it out the door. And apparently he packed these boxes himself. But anyway,
that was the big quote. As he threw his staff under. That was the thing. But go ahead, John.
This ghostwriter recorded. There were audio recordings of the entire thing. He recorded everything. And apparently when the investigation started, this ghostwriter, after he was told to preserve evidence, he destroyed the tapes, the audio tapes of Biden bumbling through a lot of this stuff, which is astonishing. Now, this guy should go to jail, okay? for obstruction of justice. Okay, the January 6 people, this is nothing compared to the January 6 people. Okay, they were having a party. Okay, and just happened to walk into the Capitol grounds. This guy destroyed evidence of Biden's incompetence and illegal activities. Why isn't he going to prison?
But I think they did capture this 5-hour, 2-day event, and that's what people are calling for now is the release of these tapes because supposedly
he said reported the deposition.
Yeah,
right.
That he couldn't remember, the death of his son, and then he's like, "Why was I going to tell him that?" And then one of the quotes at the press conference was, "I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation." So it was crazy, but a couple times, He went back to on page 212 or whatever, he agreed with something in the report, but most of it they didn't agree with.
Well, like I said, the report is an official. This is an official U.S. government document now. Okay, and it says Joe Biden is incompetent, that he's senile and doesn't know what the hell's going on. That is an official U.S. government document that says that. It's not speculation. It's a fact, and they don't know how to walk it back. And
but Dems are even calling him out because the guy, Dean Phillips, who's running also on the Dem ticket for president, he was on Fox News and I saw the interview and, he's like, it's a sad day. He doesn't need to be running. It's so embarrassing. Right. And it was just such an awful, uncontrolled press conference. And then at one point he ends it, walks away. Then they ask a question about the Israel. Then he comes back to the podium, and that's when he had the cluster mess up of who was it who the president of Egypt was, and he said it was the Mexico guy.
Yeah, he's talking about Mexico. The Mexicans. And the border stuff in Palestine, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Mexico has nothing to do with the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Well, every week we have to endure some sort of mess up, and that's like, who's going to say enough already? Is it going to be Jill Biden? I mean, I would never let my husband bumble around. I was watching that comedian that Anheuser-Busch, he has got a special on his name's Shane, I think Gillum or Gillis, but it was inappropriate, I will say, but he does a little Biden impression, and he's walking around and he's like, Biden's like a Roomba, and if you've ever owned a Roomba, that it's like he's lost on stage. That's how your Roomba is.
Just randomly goes around and crashes into stuff.
Oh my gosh, I will say,
yeah. But, it's just, and then you get the whole dual justice. Well, they're letting Biden off, but they're still charging Trump. And it's like, what Biden did with regards to classified documents and national security is far worse than anything you could even imagine.
He wasn't a president. And that was the thing. I heard Don Jr. was on Clay and Buck yesterday. So last night, that was one of my pacifiers I listened to. And, Trump's been nailed. He's how many court cases has this poor man had to endure now, and then we've got that Supreme Court one now because Colorado wants to kick him off the ballot, but it's really looking like it's going to be not going to go their way. Even the Dems are like, oh, we can't do this.
The best comment I heard on that was from Alan Dershowitz, and he said, if either one of those lawyers, referring to the Colorado side and the Trump lawyer that were arguing the case, he says, if either one of those lawyers were law students of his, he would have told them to go find another profession.
Well, he's never been top of his game, Biden, at all. And it's just, I mean, every week, all these gaffes, you're like, what? So what is it going to be? Is it going to be Kamala, who's a disaster? Or, and then why all of a sudden is this report coming out? And it wasn't on a Friday. It wasn't buried. And then they had the press, they let him loose to show how incompetent he was. And nobody's standing next to him, not even Jill.
I think what you're going to find on the Democrat side is once Biden is cut loose and Kamala Harris is a disaster, and I think they
Oh,
know that.
every soundbite hers is just as bad.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom has an ego, and he thinks he can do it, but he's not. He's never going to make it. And I think you've got a whole cabal of Democrats out there. J.B. Pritzker, good example, governor, billionaire governor. Okay, he's got the money. He could probably make a run at it, and he probably would make a run at it. You're going to have the Larry Hogans. You're going to have somebody to try to do a combined Republican Democrat ticket, with Larry Hogan and Joe Manchin or something. That's their dream ticket for these neocons. Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, another one that's talked about often. So they've got a bunch of people out there that I think they would like to run. And hell, even Adam Schiff might run for president, right?
Don't make me puke.
They all have egos, though. See, their egos are so big. It's just and you got to have an ego to run for president. But in any event,
you have to have a bank account to run for president. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is that
I think it's going to become my prediction is the Democrat convention will be a brokered convention, and Biden will not be the nominee, and Kamala Harris won't be either. If they had been smart, they would have made somebody that they wanted prominent a vice president instead of Kamala Harris. I still have never figured that out, other than they did to Kamala Harris what Obama did to Joe Biden. They wanted somebody that was an idiot and didn't matter to be vice president, so they would never overshadow him. I think that's what happened, because Val Demings was floated as a potential. As much as I hate Democrats, I think she would have been far better.
Oh yeah. Well,
than Kamala
seriously,
Harris.
Kamala can't ever get a soundbite right ever.
Right.
And I don't even know how she was a lawyer. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
but there are Democrats out there that I respect them. I don't agree with them, but I respect them, and you should take them as a formidable candidate, potential candidate.
Well, this week Langford was a Dem, and Oklahoma senator, absolute loser. If you live in Oklahoma, you need to oust this guy, because how embarrassing. And then, like I said, he had to walk it back. So.
Well, and then you had the House Republicans joining in by three of them actually. The fourth one was done for a different reason, but three Republican House members voted not to impeach Mayorkas, which was just absolutely stupid. Johnson.
Well, and if George Soros would have been there, supposedly we could have been okay, right?
Right, and I'm still trying to figure out who was doing the whip count on this thing, because you had Steve Scalise in the hospital getting a cancer treatment, right? So you got one of your leaders out that's not going to be able to vote. You've kicked out George Santos because he's not pure as the driven snow, and it's like there's no Democrat in there
He's got great lips, Sean.
Throw them all out,
But he was great on that X thing I was on. But excellent.
He would have been a solid vote to impeach Mayorkas, right? And then you have three traitors. Now there was a fourth Republican.
Right. He was going to vote the other way. I forgot his name, but he had to, in order to come back, I guess, to vote again, right?
Right.
They had to have
a tie, right?
The tie. Okay.
So we were going to lose if he had voted to impeach him. We would have lost the numbers on the numbers game, and they couldn't have brought it back up again. So he switched it over to vote against impeaching him, so that it ended up as a tie. And then it could be brought back again for a second vote. So that was a tactical move, and I don't have. I
appreciate him. I do, because the other three are losers, and he had to step up. So I do appreciate
anybody
him.
That believes Mayorkas has not been derelict in enforcing the laws of the United States, which his oath requires him to do. If they don't believe that, they are insane and they're brain dead. And I hope. Everyone.
Yeah, so it was Representative Blake Moore of Utah switched his vote at the last minute to no, so that the chamber can bring it back up again. Yeah. So we appreciate Representative Blake Moore, because
he's not one of the bad guys.
He's not the bad guys. Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, Ken Buck of Colorado, and Tom McClintock of California are the problem children. Yep. But
exactly.
We talk about this every week, and what's if Trump gets in, I think make Mayor Adams give $54 million to the 400 people as we put them back on an airplane back to their countries. Because let's give them something on the way out, but so that we're nice. But our country is changing, and I had PTSD because, I recently, when was that? Right before Thanksgiving, I was in the Izod store over in Destin and Silver Sands, and there were some illegals in there shoplifting. Yep. The woman engaged them. They, a couple times, and I'm alone in this store with two ladies working. Well, what happened in Times Square? There was people shoplifting, and the 15-year-old shoplifter had a gun and shot a tourist in the leg who ended up in the hospital in a shoplifting incident. So this is real. We should not have to worry that people, why are they shoplifting? You can't even arrest these people. You can't put them in jail. Now there's guns involved. And that's what, I was very stressed out that day in that little store thinking, oh my gosh, who are these people? And there's never been a shoplifting incident like that, and here this week, somebody shot, John, an innocent tourist.
Until the people of those cities that can vote get tired of it and vote these clowns out and say, we want an administration here that's going to take all these illegals and ship them back to Mexico or Venezuela or wherever the hell they came from and get them out of the country and get them out of here. But that's not going to happen. It's not bad enough yet. And it may get to that point.
But how bad is it going to be? Because there's going to be millions of people, and we're not going to be able to get rid of these people. And again, I always caveat this with I'm for legal immigration because 3 of my family members came from Scotland, Spain, and Hungary legally.
I don't have any problem with legal immigration. I have problems with people that break the law to come into this country and then expect a free ride from us. They can't speak English. They don't have no desire to assimilate. They just want to take, and be owed everything for the rest of their life. And I have no use for anybody like that. Send them back to wherever third world country they have, because that's the reason they're a third world country is because that's the kind of people they are. If that's the lifestyle they want, then get them the hell out of here.
Well, I'm not for giving out free stuff because we have problems, already enough in this country.
I think eventually when the economy breaks, and it's going to break at some point, we can't keep printing money at the rate we're printing money. Okay, we're going to. There's another depression's going to come. The money is going to become worthless, and then you're going to see bad enough. Okay, and then that's when things will change. But that it takes a depression level event and experience to change people's behavior permanently, and it will end up being like my grandparents, where they always talked about the depression. They didn't want welfare. They understood what depression was, and people being hungry and not having places to live and all that stuff.
No, today it's about getting your little credit card to go to the bodega in New York City, right, John.
And when our money is worthless and the economy is broke and people don't have jobs and are starving, then you'll see. I read a book one time a couple of years ago on electromagnetic pulse warfare. And you want to read a frightening scenario about a society that degrades in 30 days. That's all it takes to go from our wonderful world that we live in now to complete chaos and desperation. Less than 30 days. And that's we are.
Well, one of the things that was out there, now that I'm more into X now, and I want to get my blue check mark for Valentine's Day. That was my request for my husband. I mean, I can afford it any time, but I'm like, could you give me that as a gift? My blue check mark so that I'm verified. Yeah. But one of the things out there now, like that Joe Buck that I recently saw on my trip in Tampa that was eating with gorgeous Troy Aikman at the restaurant I was at called the Meat Market. Joe Buck he's pushed these ideas in a couple interviews that something's going to happen over Super Bowl weekend. And it's kind of gone viral a little bit out there that, this is the time somebody brings a dirty suitcase. Is that what they call it? I forgot what it's called now.
A dirty bomb.
a dirty bomb in a suitcase, and there was like some other people going, oh, I'm getting out of Vegas. I'm going to California. Well, that might fall off anyways, but yeah, so that was out there. And so I started, I hate when I put my military cap on because then I start thinking about security and I was like, they better have about 100 Sheriff Tommy Fords in charge over there kicking ass, so I did think about that. But I wanted to go back to the story of, one of the takeaways that was so interesting from the Tucker Carlson interview was when Putin was talking about Clinton, and the quote here that Putin said, I guess they had a discussion about Russia entering NATO, and Putin says, at a meeting here in the Kremlin with the outgoing President Bill Clinton, right here in the next room, I asked him, Bill, do you think if Russia asked to join NATO, do you think it would happen? Suddenly he said, it's interesting. I think so, Clinton told him. Well, then they had dinner later. But in the evening when we met for dinner, he said, I talked to my team. No, it's not possible now. You can ask him. I think he will watch over our interview. He'll confirm it, the Russian president added. Wasn't that interesting? Wouldn't that have changed the whole dynamic of the world if Russia had been in NATO?
Well, that kind of goes back to Larry's book about the history of globalism and back to wasn't Bretton Woods? It was the Versailles Treaty of Versailles.
Versailles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Japanese wanting to be included and basically have a non-discrimination aspect added to that, and the U.S., because we were superior along with the Europeans, would not agree to that. And what would have happened following that into World War II if the Japanese had been more included in the world organization rather than being excluded based on their race? So I thought that was it's a very interesting divergent passage.
Well, wasn't it thinking, because sometimes life's about luck and where you are, and what if Russia had been included in NATO?
Well,
you allow this KGB guy in NATO. Would it be different now?
You talk about the road less traveled. Same thing about when Reagan met with Gorbachev in Iceland. And there was they discussed eliminating nuclear weapons across the world. Period. It's like what would have happened if that had actually turned into truth? It's just there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas,
but then the other thing that I did bring up with Allen West this morning was that Nord Stream pipeline, because Putin said it was the CIA. And you and I have read, how many articles have you and I read on this?
And that's
how
our
many
position since early on. That this was a U.S. based operation. That it was not some Ukrainians renting a sailboat in Sweden and going out and diving down and blowing up this pipeline. That didn't happen, folks. That's the narrative. That's the story they want you to believe, but it's not the story.
Well, it's like the story of Putin is on his deathbed. He did not look. He looked totally fit, because he married a gymnast, and they've got like 3 kids now, and she lives in Switzerland. He looked totally fit and could definitely father those 3 children.
Well, you always hear this crap there. You hear it about Kim Jong Un, crazy Un. It's the same kind of garbage. It's just people trying to diminish him, so he doesn't appear to be as much of a threat. And I don't believe a lot of the stuff I read in those cases. But last story here for this week.
Which one? We have to talk about the FAA. I hope it's that one. Well, which one do you want to talk about?
That. Make that the next.
Okay,
one.
Because that one's too good.
I want to talk about the Pope Francis rebellion. Maybe you want to flip them around and do that one last. But I'm not a fan of Pope Francis, as you well know.
He's only a man. I told you, the priest told me that many years ago with his encyclical on, I don't know, global warming or whatever it was.
Right, and which was written by an atheist, a European atheist for him, and he signed up to it. Okay, so let's I just but anyway, there's been this movement. There's a schism that's growing in the church, overall this homosexual and gay pride and blessings and all this kind of stuff, which the Pope is promoting. He's promoting leniency, that this maybe it's not as bad as we think it is, kind of thing. And I guess the Europeans, particularly led by the Germans, are very liberal on this, and the African Catholic Church is 180 out on this. They don't want anything to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's amazing. And Pope Francis leans towards the European view of stuff, but very liberal. Now, he's from Argentina. That's where...
Yeah, and he's mega liberal.
Right. So he has this very liberal interpretation of what the church is, and has no trouble with government, collaborating with government. And I read an article years ago. It was called the Catholic Church Deal with the Devil, and it had to do with the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops signing up with basically the Johnson administration in the 60s to promote the welfare state as a good thing, and destroying the family in the process, the welfare family structure, which I've never figured out. But that's why the name of the article.
Which is so weird, because we know, the family is integral into success of children and mothers and fathers and jobs and your economic well-being. So I don't get it either.
So and this is just more of that same stuff, just pushed out. So there's been a letter signed by 90 Catholic figures, as it says, that really are very critical of the Pope, and I'm glad to see that there's some pushback on this. I'm not a priest, so I haven't taken a vow of obedience to the bishop or the Pope. So I can say what I want and think what I want, but I'm not just falling in line because the Pope says it. And the thing that got me was there was another letter he came out and said, without liturgical reform, there is no reform of the church. And I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, oh, my God, this guy is crazy. He wants a radical change.
Yeah, no, I read that article.
In the structure of the church,
And it is crazy, and he's saying, the quote, it's a big quote. A church that does not feel the passion for spiritual growth, that does not try to speak in an understandable way to the men and women of his time, that does not feel for the division between Christians, who does not tremble with the anxiety of announcing Christ to the people, is a sick church, and these are symptoms the Holy Father emphasized in his address. And then he goes on to say, we can only make such a statement by understanding what the liturgy is in a theological sense. But isn't it about a man and a woman? And I mean, of course, love your neighbor, which you can be gay and love your neighbor, but the church has always been, the Catholic Church has been, you can't act on that. So, but how do you go around blessing people? Because if they're a union, they're together.
Right, and the thing that alarmed me about that statement was it smacks of moral relativism. The church of our time, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what happened to the timeless universal Catholic Church? That is the basis.
2,000 years old, yeah.
Right? And it's like, you're not supposed to be changing your doctrine to adapt back to the gay thing, okay? Because gayness, or whatever the hell you want to call it, under the rainbow flag, is generally accepted, and I have no, and I say straight up, I don't care what you do as an adult in your private life is your business. I don't care.
Right, and I don't have to know about it every minute of the day.
Just don't shove it down my throat and tell me to accept it as normal. Okay, that's my only condition. Is I never accept it as normal. Don't make me. Don't tell me I have to. And so if you want to do it, fine, go ahead. It's your business, and you're the one that has to stand there in front of God on Judgment Day, and you'll be judged, not me. He will do the judging. Okay, so that's my foundational point for looking at this stuff, and to sit here and say that we have to adapt the church because we want more people in the pews, because we need to appeal. We need the rock band, to be like the mega church, and all this stuff. And I'm just saying, this is crazy. This is not what this is about.
Well,
you
it's
think that's
changing
what it
the
takes-
Bible. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
exactly,
It's
exactly.
rewriting the Bible with your own Bible.
Right.
And again, this is all built on Jesus and, thousands of years. And oh my goodness. Yeah.
But
Well, I'm with you.
What amazed me, Veronica, with reading this stuff is going through this, and they're talking about all these. I'm reading the stuff, and I'm like, is this some kind of foreign language that I've never been? I understand having scholars.
Well, it's going to be love your neighbor is what it comes down to. So, and it doesn't matter if your neighbor, has green hair or purple hair or married or unmarried or, but then I don't know. Why aren't we, I don't know. You bless people. People can go up and get blessings, but why do we have to make it this now, two gay people come to the church and they're a union, you're going to bless them. And it's not what you're, pushing.
You shouldn't. You're right. You shouldn't be.
We're pushing marriage between a man and a woman.
Why are you blessing something that's a sin? Okay, that's the part I can't get around. That's where this modernism, this moral relativism is coming in. It's like this: if it's sinful behavior, it's sinful behavior. Yes, you can go to confession and ask for forgiveness, but part of asking for forgiveness is not engaging in a sinful behavior.
Okay.
You have to make some commitment to
that.
And
as the priest said, we must pray for the Pope and we must pray for all Christians, and hopefully we get it right. I want to make it to see St. Peter at the pearly gates, and
I do too. But
let me in.
But it gets back to me, and I sit here and say, is the church relevant to me then, if they're willing to make these accommodations and
well, it's always
theological
accommodations for the
something.
LGBT. This morning, as I was show prepping, I got up early, and CNN had some sort of. They talked to all these transgenders that are on hormone blockers. How does it make them feel? And like 99% said it made them feel better. 1% didn't. Then they had a transgender man on, and he was like, "This is so great because look, we're embracing." He goes, and I talked to these people in their states, and one of the questions was, "Do you feel like you have to leave your state, John?" And 50% said yes because of legislation. And I don't even care. Do whatever you want, Yet there was I couldn't even read the article. It was a transgender person that molested a baby this week. And I'm like, okay, well, that's really great, but leave everybody out. Do what you want to do. Leave us alone and stop putting it in our face all the time. And I'm not going to boycott you. You can be my neighbor. Just be nice and mow your lawn, and don't have your car on cinder blocks.
Well, like I said, I don't care what two consenting adults do. That's
but it's in your face every time.
Right. When you start grooming, when you start twerking and having, drag queen out.
And when I was sick,
over the line.
I've been finally at the end of 3 weeks, 10 days I was in bed, and I watched 20 Netflix, and now I feel like I officially can write my own. But every single Netflix rom-com I watched was pushing oh my gosh, there's always a gay couple here or there, constantly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't care anymore. This is a romance comedy about a couple. So, but we always got to have this little extra. So just let us live our life. I just want to watch a rom-com about a couple that comes together and gets married, wedding season with the two Indian that their mothers made them go to 20 weddings was my favorite one. So I recommend that. It was sweet.
Life doesn't have to be complex. It can be simple.
Well, and you and I are always reading all the complex. So, but the last story in the afterburner, because you're an aviator, I've watched some Masters of the Air with my husband, and the costumes, I will say, are phenomenal. I present an Oscar or whatever it is for the costumes on this. But Matt Walsh, who I listen to him, he's on the radio at night, and so I used to listen to him. Oh, he's excellent, and he's a father. He's a Christian. Well, apparently Matt Walsh obtained a disturbing video from a high-level FAA meeting, and you may never fly again. And somebody gave him this video of a meeting from I don't know what year it was. It was like a year or two ago, where again the FAA is pushing. They don't want white men flying airplanes, and why that's a prerogative, and their number one thing makes you throw up. So it showed a whole discussion to reduce the number of white males in aviation, John. So, John, you better retire that airplane of yours.
I was shocked. I was shocked reading this. Like this is quotes from FAA senior leadership. They had one here, the FAA's Deputy Chief Operating Officer. Okay, this is like number 2, Angela McCulloch, sitting there saying that we need to have more workers go from the ramp to the cockpit. She means baggage handlers becoming pilots. I'm like,
there's a reason they're a baggage handler, and some of us know our abilities. I am made to be a passenger in the right seat next to you, John. I could make a radio call, but I don't want to be in charge of landing and rudders and throttles and buttons and no. So, and I'm probably smart enough to do it. I will tell you, I could probably do it.
What this reminds me of is stupid people that don't really know what they're talking about. And this tells me that this person, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer of the FAA, has no clue what it takes to be a pilot. Zero.
But this person, whoever this is, Angela, we got to Google her bio. 30 years of service in the FAA and the U.S. Air Force. So supposedly she has some cred, but wasn't the FAA at one point run by somebody that wasn't a pilot, that black guy from Denver?
Well, they tried to get him, and he couldn't get a Senate confirmation hearing because the Republicans weren't having any of it. Now the guy they got now,
but he's a pilot now.
He is a former pilot. He's a former FAA high-level guy. He knows what's going on. He's well qualified.
Oh, well, I'm looking at this woman. She's black, so this is where it comes from.
Back to
it's the DEI
right?
crap. So yeah, I'm trying to find her bio. I mean, I had no idea she was black until this literal moment.
Okay, so she's lamenting flight operations as a quote white male dominated industry. Well, it's like okay.
All right, go talk to Dr. Gay from Harvard. These people are idiots.
The fact a lot of the pilots are former military, and I don't care. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Being a pilot is about merit. Okay, I want the guy that knows what they're doing up there. I want the guy that has good situational
Okay, this woman,
awareness.
Okay, she holds a master's in administration from Central Michigan University. She's continued a lifelong commitment to service by being a certified professional coach, where she's committed to helping others reach their full potential in professional and personal relationships. So I'm trying to see how she's in the Air Force. Okay, this is just crap. Why isn't it, in this position, again, somebody in her picture, she's wearing a brooch with 2 airplanes, John. I can do that too.
Well, it's not.
I've been on runways my entire life, because
right.
my dad flew B-52s.
Right. The fact that Buttigieg and Biden nominated
just
the guy from
incompetence.
who was not a pilot, who would never run anything in his life, and apparently ran the bus system in Los Angeles into the ground. He had 1 year of managing Denver Airport, and he only got hired in that job because he was black. That's basically what
but it doesn't say here that she's a pilot. Like I would expect who we had from the ECP airport, Northwest Florida International, Parker McCollin. Like he's got the degrees and he's got all the pilot licenses. That's who I want running an airport. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is all crap in her bio about, being a cheerleader and a leadership person and changing director of community enterprise, now known as people services. Okay. Well, that has nothing to do with aviation.
What the story is basically talking about is the fact that they're out there promoting these DEI hire pilots that have no business.
That was the other scary part.
They fail their simulator rides, they fail their check rides, and instead of booting them out like they would do the white guy would never get a second chance. Okay, they would be gone. Okay,
no, it's the one quote here. The source So some source also notes that Delta routinely makes exceptions for trans-identifying pilots concerning grooming and behavioral standards. Internally, Delta has even pushed a lengthy guide for pilots who believe they were born in the wrong body. And then this other quote was, a second source, a pilot I've confirmed works at Delta, tells me that Delta has recently promoted, this is the scariest one, a trans-identifying pilot who repeatedly received bad reviews from captains, and according to the source, the pilot would likely not have survived probation if he weren't trans. That's a WTF moment right there, people.
And they're going to end up killing people, okay? It's like going back a few years to the Kogan Air disasters, twin-engine turboprop that was flying. The pilot had received numerous fails, but they wouldn't fire him. And he's out there. They're in icing conditions. He doesn't know what he's doing. The airplane's stalling. It's loaded up with ice because he's an idiot pilot that has no business being in the seat, and his co-pilot had no business being in that seat.
Well, Matt Walsh lets it rip because he writes, this industry-wide embrace of overt mental illness afflicts every aspect of aviation. Another source told me that his job is to design advanced military systems, but he's constantly sidetracked by DEI proposals like a gender-inclusive seatbelt. What WTF again?
Yep. Well, it's sort of this infects the military. It's like the military wanting to come up with flight suits for pregnant.
Okay, when you're pregnant, you don't need to be in a flight suit. I'm sorry. Put on a damn BDUs like I did. No, I thought that because you look like a dork when you're pregnant and you're that pregnant. So I know I didn't like that either. I thought that was silly.
Flying an airplane if you're pregnant, right? You're not going to be out there in a fighter jet pulling G's.
The story concludes, and I adore Matt Walsh, and I listen to him all the time. He wrote, it's only a matter of time until this combination of incompetence, and here we go, John, and anti-white discrimination leads to a major disaster. The aviation industry needs a completely new mandate, one that's focused solely on safety before a lot of people die. I mean, I'm sick of DI crap. And I'm a woman, Hispanic, I'm sick of it. I just want the best for the job. And that quote, what did you read? Going from the ramp to the cockpit doesn't mean you can fly.
We need to get a little uncomfortable and have people go from the ramp to the cockpit. It's a stupidity on a major scale, and the two recent most recent disasters where a lot of people were killed were the two Boeing 737 crashes where they had the MCAS system on there that was
explain what the MCAS system is for the non-aviators.
It's a trim actuating system, and Boeing didn't bother to tell pilots that it existed. They hid the existence of it in collusion with the FAA, by the way. They hid the existence of this trim system that automatically trimmed the airplane, and then Boeing did some stupid engineering stuff like having what's called a single point of failure on the angle of attack system. And anyway, the computer thought the airplane was doing something not flying normally, so it started trimming the airplane to make it fly right. And the pilots were unaware of what was going on and were trying to counter it, and ended up crashing the airplanes and killing, I think, 600 people, 300 and something on each airplane were killed. And that's when they grounded every 737 MAX in the world until Boeing fixed this problem. But the problem, when I read this, the two flights that had the problems were, I think, Ethiopian and something Lion Air, if I remember correctly. But they were talking about the pilots' qualifications because they were third world country pilots. And they were initially they were blaming the pilots as being ill-trained and incapable of flying the airplane, which I was, this is out of Aviation Week. And I was astonished at that. Saying, are you telling me that these pilots, they're that stupid that they can't fly an airplane? and apparently that was the assertion they were making, was these were third world hired pilots, and they were not they really shouldn't be flying airplanes.
But I've heard that for years, because I worked in Vegas full-time for 4 and then came back for another 6, like when they would have red flags, like there were certain countries they were afraid were in the mock war of 100+ airplanes because they weren't good pilots. You know what I'm saying? We won't say who they were, but it's a known quantity of who these people are.
Right. There's certain characteristics about a pilot. You can't take a ramp guy that's loading baggage and say, we're going to put you in the cockpit and teach you to fly. I'll give you an example. I'm a software engineer, okay? I understand how to program a computer. I've been doing it for decades. And it always amazed me. You'd see the TV advertisements for idiots to be, get your degree in computer science. You know, you can go to the A+ program and you know, you'll make millions of dollars, you know. And I'm laughing. It's like, you don't understand the first thing about computer programming if you don't know mathematics and
but that's the thing stuff. When you talk to fighter pilots, you're taking off and land, like the amount of things that they have to deal with, you know, flying an airplane, then all of the information coming, like it's hundreds of things in like 90 seconds. You know, it's, I don't know, I heard the stat a long time ago.
Awareness. Right. It's a mindset.
We're not all born with that, you know?
Right. Your brain can either do it or it can't.
I'm stuck on Candy Crush. I'm stuck on Candy Crush level 225, John. Help me out.
That's what I'm saying. There are black pilots, there are women pilots.
There's
that
everything.
Can do that. They have the immense.
I met one of the new women pilots going through, you know, here at our Christmas party, and she was, you know, wicked smart and obviously good, you know.
Right.
So
she knew how to fly an airplane, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem with that. But she was qualified to do it.
Qualified with the big Q. You know, not from the ramp to the cockpit. Well, to wrap up, I want to just talk the real quick, because we always have our political cartoons, and my favorite one this week, John. Thank you. You're so sweet. He loves to make me laugh. You know, it was the Nevada. Nevada was a big cluster this week because they had the primary on Tuesday and then the caucus on Thursday, and Trump just wanted the caucus because of the delegate votes. But Tuesday, Nikki Haley. So it's Nikki Haley. She's at a slot machine, and it says 2024 primary in Nevada, and she's pulling down, you know, the handle for the cute slot machine, and the little things pop up. One says, "You lost to all the above," because she came in second, and there was a little block on their ballot that said nobody above, and guess what? They didn't even choose you, Nikki. Nikki, they didn't choose you.
And it wasn't a minor loss. I mean, she lost like 80-20 or something, or 70-30. I mean,
but they still keep inviting her. She keeps getting invited to all these national shows, and I'm like, oh my gosh, stop it! She's driving me insane. Enough.
Trump won the primary, the caucus poll.
The caucus,
97%, I think, was what he won the caucus poll with. So he just blew her away, and then she's sitting there trying to say, well, it was all rigged for Trump, you know. And I'm laughing, and it's like, no, you're a loser.
Well, it's been a great show. We've got to thank Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, America's Patriot is what I always call him. And he is due here February 22nd. If you want to come see him, it's a ceremony at the First Baptist Church right by WMBB, and at 7 p.m. free. You can come see him as we honor 8 combat wounded veterans that'll be in town here. So cannot wait to host him. And then the book from New York Times bestselling author Larry Schweikart, you can find it on Amazon. And what a great interview. His new, just dropped the book, A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. And oh my gosh, what a great show, John. And then I'm having a Super Bowl party tomorrow, so I got to get organized. It's my 10th annual, and I hope you're in town. So you said you might pop over. We got red chili, always white chili. It's all about my, you know, I call it my fighter pilot artichoke dip is to die for. Everybody fights for that whenever I make that, and there's none left. So you got to come. And Chief versus 49ers. I'm kind of rooting for the young whippersnapper that, you know, is the last draft pick and only makes $870,000, and again couldn't afford his Vegas hotel. So I'm rooting for the youngin, not Mahomes that makes $56 million a year. So, anyways, it was a great Veronica Live, John, and I hope to see you at the party.
All right, it was good.
Okay, God bless, and check us out. We're on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on all your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Podcast Addict, YouTube now, LinkedIn. I post a lot, True Social, and everything's always on my Twitter, X, which hopes to have a check mark before the next show, John. Happy Lent.
Okay, and remember, everybody, don't get depressed. We will win in the end. We always
okay.
do.
2024. We have to. So, anyways, all right. God bless everyone. And Veronica Live out with John. Bye.